They have looked at the number of people on the planet under this refinement system, and they are going to do it by, just like any business, white supremacy is a business, we're going to have a large percentage of black people that we're going to put out front. Spooks by the door.
Starting this Friday, you have the chance to see a radical and rare film in theaters more than 50 years after its original run was cut short. The Spook Who Sat by the Door was a revolutionary movie released in 1973. Based on the novel is the fictional story of Dan Freeman, the first black recruit to the CIA, and on the surface, he is a token buried in the copy room. But Freeman is in it for the long haul. He takes what he learned in training back to Chicago and leads a group of black militants. Written by author Sam Greenlee and directed by filmmaker Ivan Dixon, the film is both a satire and a serious exploration of black identity, different perspectives on anti-racism, and American white supremacy. The movie initially was marketed as a quote-unquote black exploitation film, but its political overtones made it controversial, and the film was removed from theaters. Greenlee himself claimed that the FBI got involved, urging theaters to stop screening it. After receiving a restored DVD release in 2004, The Spook Who Sat by the Door was added to the Library of Congress National Film Registry in 2012. Now, a 4K restoration of the film makes its world premiere this Friday at Bam Rose Cinema. It'll screen for 2 weeks there and then at the Maisel Cinema in Harlem. Joining me now to talk about the restoration is, I hope I get this right, Nomatande Dixon, daughter of Ivan Dixon, the director. Hi, Nomatande.
Hi, thank you.
And also joining me is Natiki Hope Presley, daughter of Sam Greenlee, author of the novel and writer and producer of the film. Nice to meet you.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So Nomatande, Friday will be the world premiere of this new version of the film. When did the project to restore the movie begin?
Well, the project to restore actually began in late 2020. My family, my mother, my brother, and I had met a gentleman who worked on the restoration of Nothing But a Man. And through my contacts with him, he kind of informed me that the Library of Congress really had a stake in the game in terms of working to restore pieces, make sure they're preserved, and all of that. So introduced me to some contacts at the Library of Congress, and we began speaking. And the next year, we submitted for grants.
Tell me about the technical challenges that were involved in restoring the film.
Well, fortunately, my father had kept the masters in a vault.
Great.
From the beginning. Yeah. He had kept them very well in a vault in Hollywood. And so the assets were really in very good condition, both audio as well as the film. Very limited damage at all to them. So it really was not as difficult to restore at this time. There was one other digital remaster in the early 2000s, but again, the assets were in very good condition, and so it went very well.
Natiki, the novel was published by a British house, and your father said it was rejected by almost 40 American publishers before it was picked up. When it was finally published, what was the reception like in the States?
Well, so you're right. It was a long journey. He got it published in the UK, and when it finally got to the US, honestly, people were buzzing about it right away. The book was very controversial. It was communicating things that people really weren't saying out in public as much, and it was a great opportunity for people to read a story about, uprising and revolution. So, I mean, it was a kind of an underground thing, but it got around very quickly. I know people who still have their original copies.
The story follows the fictional character of Dan Freeman, CIA's first black recruit. And your father, Natiki, had some experience in the government himself. He was in the U.S. Foreign Service in the 50s and the 60s. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
What did he tell you about that time in the Foreign Service, especially for a black man?
Well, he didn't really talk much about it. I mean, his original reason for going into the service was really to pay for college. He wanted to be able to pay for his college education. So he went, like a lot of people did, to get a GI Bill. But when he got to the military, he discovered that there was a lot of things going on that he did not agree with or he was very uncomfortable with. And for some time, when he was working in the foreign services, he was a propagandist, which, a lot of people were like, well, what is that? And he was really responsible for sharing the story of what was happening at the time where he was located in Baghdad and Afghanistan and so many other places to communicate that information back to the base in the US. And I think in the process of all of that, he got mixed up in a lot of things, got to meet a lot of people, and learned a whole lot about foreign relations.
How do you think his experience informed the way he portrays Freeman's experience in the CIA?
Honestly, to some degree, it's semi-autobiographical in that a lot of that storyline definitely comes from his own experiences in the service and all the things that he was exposed to, the things that he learned. I mean, it really is. A lot of people ask me that question, like, is it really him? Is it saying really? It's pretty much a lot of there's some portion of the story, especially there's a scene in the movie where he's talking to Willie and he's talking about his grandmother who couldn't read and he would go back and run home because he wanted to help his grandmother read. And that's actually a real story. That's
Wow.
really true for him. And so he put a lot of himself into Dan Freeman.
Namatande, your father took on this film. He was a well-known actor. He'd appeared in more than 100 episodes of Hogan's Heroes up until the 70s. And he directed TV episodes, but this was only, I believe, a second feature film. What did the film mean for his career?
Well, the film meant many different things for his career. His career was long, began on Broadway in 1957, and a lot of acting credits before the directorial debuts in the late 60s. The only other feature film he did do was Trouble Man, which was right before The Spook Who Sat by the Door. And he really did that film to basically prove that he could handle a feature length film. The Spook Who Sat by the Door was obviously a book that he had read and was completely blown away by. Read the book, slammed it down on the table, and said, I must make this film. And it was a great risk to do this film. The content, obviously, the independent filmmaking, the money to get the film done, all of that was on the line. But it was a risk that he was really willing to take because it was message and themes that resonated totally with him. And it was something that he wanted to say through film.
We are talking about the restoration of The Spook Who Sat by the Door. You can see it at BAM and the Maisel Cinema in Harlem starting this Friday. My guests are Namatande Dixon, daughter of the director and actor Ivan Dixon, and Atiki Presley, daughter of the author Sam Greenlee. Your father's they didn't have permits to shoot the film where it takes place in Chicago. And according to NPR's Code Switch, the themes of racial strife for Sam Greenlee planned to film did not please the then mayor, Richard Daley. Let's start with Namatande. What obstacles did your father face in just getting the movie made?
Well, certainly the funding was the biggest obstacle in getting it off the ground. They actually went to individuals within the community to get investment in the film. They would take multiple investors and put 5,000 at a time together and to create, a core budget for this. It was later on that United Artists came in and pulled in some completion funds for it. But the struggle in terms of getting funding for the film was, of course, number one. In Chicago, you're correct. There was pushback in having any filming take place in Chicago, and Mayor Richard Hatcher was instrumental in most of the filming taking place in Gary, Indiana, which looked very much like Chicago. So that was a wonderful experience. Mayor Hatcher and all of the support team around him, they were very supportive of the filmmaking there. But really getting the film off the ground and into completion was frustration. And then obviously the banning of the film and the pulling of the film, and then wanting to redistribute the film. It was, difficult over the years in terms of continuing to try to push the film out there.
Natiki, the movie was released in theaters around the country, but only briefly. It was reportedly withdrawn from circulation after only a few weeks. United Artists pulled it for, quote, bad box office. But Sam Greenlee described it as pressure from within the FBI. First of all, what was the response of the film when it first came out?
Well, I mean, I've heard a lot of stories. I was still a baby when this was happening. But the stories that I've heard from people who actually went to the theaters, I had one woman, Teresa Stovall, who told me that she had seen it when she was in college, and she said she went back to go tell her roommate, "Oh my gosh, you got to see this film." And by the time she got back to go see it with her roommate, it had already been pulled.
Oh, wow.
And I think for so many people, I think part of the challenge was, I mean, I think it's good and bad. I think it was terrible that they pulled it, because it was a great film that really a lot of people would love to have seen at the time, but it also made people curious about why it was pulled. And I know that generated a lot of, publicity. A lot of people were asking. There's a lot of buzz about the film after that. So it not being available for a time was really, I think, what helped to build the momentum. And then when it was later released and on DVD and so forth, people were seeing, I mean, people still love that movie, even the people who just go ahead and have pirated off of YouTube. They all say that they're doing anything they can to try to see this movie. And thankfully, we watched and sat with an audience, a live audience recently, and felt that same energy, that same excitement. And we're really, really grateful for that.
Nomatande, so what did happen to the film in the 50 years since it was released? Did it have any other theatrical release?
Yeah, so, soon after it was pulled and negotiations went on with United Artists, there was an attempt to redistribute. There were some screenings, of course, that took place during that time. Over the years, the film has been taught consistently within film schools across the country. There has always been inquiries and requests to screen the film in different locations. So, along with the underground interest in the film and being seen in that way, there were also always one-off screenings, et cetera, that occurred, whether here or internationally. It was in 2004, though, that a significant effort was made to redistribute on DVD.
As people go see the film, I was great to re-see it. What questions do you want them to ask each other? What conversations do you want to have people talk about? Noma?
I think for sure that, one of the things that my father really believed in film and the medium as being a way to communicate to audiences. He was an activist himself. I believe that the work really resonated with him because it aligned with so many of his beliefs and his thoughts on race. And he wanted the film to provoke thought. So whatever conclusion you may come to, he really wanted the audiences to walk away thinking and really doing some self-evaluation, et cetera. And the film really does that. We were talking about, you can see it many different times and you'll come away with something different each time. It's very layered. So I would like for folks to come away really thinking about things as they are today. It's amazing that some of the same issues still resonate. We're dealing with these issues today. And so it's a thought-provoking piece, just like the book was thought-provoking.
The Spook Who Sat by the Door, you can see it at BAM and the Maisel Cinema in Harlem starting this Friday. My guests have been Nomatande Dixon and Natiki Presley. Thank you so much for sharing this film with us.
You can blame me, try to shame me, and still I'll
Today, New Orleans has no public beaches, and many reasons for that are actually tied to a time when beaches were segregated. For the latest episode of Sea Change, the Coastal Desk's Eva Tesfaye explores the uncomfortable history of Lincoln Beach and lingering impacts of segregation.
Come join me for a day at the beach. That's a sentence you don't hear a lot in New Orleans. It's a nice sunny Saturday. I've just parked on the side of a street in New Orleans East. If you don't live in New Orleans, you might not know how different New Orleans East is. It's not the tightly packed shotgun houses you might be picturing. These houses are more spread out, with driveways and mailboxes, like a regular suburb. I'm parked on Hain Boulevard. On one side of the street, there's a line of cars, some houses. On the other side is a levee. Tall, steep concrete bordering the street. At the top of that levee is a fence. And beyond it, you can't see it, there's a lake. And on that lake is a beach. And that's where I'm trying to go. But it's not going to be easy. Cars coming really fast, so you have to be kind of careful to pass. But there's a lot of people parked here. There's a lot of families coming who are walking over to the beach. So I'm gonna cross now. And I see Sage. He was waiting for me. Sage Michael Pellet is standing at the top of the levee. He's a skinny black guy with a laid-back, outdoorsy vibe. He's got a bucket hat and a hiking backpack. And he tells me where we have to go next.
Then we got this short wall, this fence wall right here that you can climb over. Right past the caution, do not enter sign, no trespassing. We do that.
We ignore the sign. Okay, I'm climbing over. I think I'm just gonna jump. All right. But we're still not at the beach yet. Now we're gonna walk and cross the train tracks.
Yeah, it's an active railroad. The trains always blow their horn. You know, they know about this area. And people are real careful.
I just watched a couple with a small baby do the same thing. They passed their toddler off to each other to hop over the fence.
But this is the barriers you have to cross and get through to get to Lincoln Beach.
Yes.
And that shouldn't be.
Lincoln Beach, named after Abraham Lincoln, the so-called Great Emancipator. During segregation, it was a blacks-only beach, built to give people here badly needed access to nature, in particular water. And that's what Sage wants now, a real beach for New Orleanians, especially for Black New Orleanians. We walk through a small forest. I see remnants of huge, long picnic shelters. These used to be packed with families, drying off, sharing food.
I can imagine in the past there were some neon lights running along it, and there's some bathroom settings in the back of it.
But those picnic shelters are now abandoned. All that remains are curved cement pillars covered in graffiti and full of trash bags, which Sage actually put there. He and other beach advocates try to keep the beach clean.
This is our third pile.
Since it closed 6 decades ago, Lincoln Beach has been left to decay. People still come to swim, but they're going rogue. We're all trespassing. Because the people who live around here, they need this place. Half the year in New Orleans feels like summer. It's hot, humid, unbearable, unless you have somewhere to cool off. Sage brought me here because he's one of the people pushing the city to spend millions of dollars to renovate Lincoln Beach, to officially reopen it as New Orleans' only public beach, a place for everyone in the city to cool off.
We hold on to space to make sure that it's preserved, it's open for all people. Recognize this historically built for Black people, but also recognize the indigenous people that was even here before that, because this was a coastal community.
Finally, we see the water and the crowds. A lot of families, mostly Black and Hispanic. Latin music blasts from speakers on a snowball stand. People are hammocking. They have tubes in the water, pool noodles. There's 2 kids playing with like water guns.
The water gun.
There's a bunch of people fishing on that little like.
That's a jetty over there, and so that's a good fishing point right there.
Sage and I sit in camping chairs on a quieter part of the waterfront. We look out at Lake Pontchartrain. It's really a bay, north of New Orleans, connected to the Gulf of Mexico. New Orleans is surrounded by water. I thought when I moved here, I'd get to swim in it. Water is important to me. My dad didn't know how to swim, so he made sure all his kids did. We all became swimmers and lifeguards. Floating in the ocean or a lake has always relaxed me, made me feel like I was connected to the earth. But even though New Orleans has water in every direction, it's hard to access. Sage is trying to change that by having the city take care of Lincoln Beach instead of volunteers like him.
I say it's neglected. I'm going to do for free for my community what you're supposed to be doing right now.
Raphael Casimir Jr. remembers going to Lincoln Beach when he was little.
My earliest memories probably I must have been maybe about 10, going there.
Raphael is in his 80s now. He has thick curly hair with a bit of gray. When we met, he was soft-spoken, but he had the composed, thoughtful presence of an academic. Raphael is a sixth-generation New Orleanian. His family went to Lincoln Beach every summer. It was remote, way off in the outskirts of the city, on the other side of a major canal, so not easy to get to. Raphael says buses took black families to Lincoln Beach from all over New Orleans. They would make a day of it.
What I most remember about it was a long ways out. And I know I would always go to sleep.
Even the trip out to the beach was an adventure.
You had fun on the buses, singing and telling jokes or whatever. You got to interact with people from different neighborhoods.
Lincoln Beach first opened a little before Raphael was born, in the early 1940s. Before that, there weren't any beaches in New Orleans for black people to swim in. White people had Pontchartrain Beach, which opened in 1928. The nearest place black people could go was a resort in Mississippi called Gulfside. At the time, New Orleans had so few places to swim that people ended up drowning trying to cool off.
In fact, one of the problems that people that had black youth not having swimming pools, I think we only had 2 black swimming pools in the whole city. And so people drowned in canals or drowned in the lake because there was no place where you could really swim.
New Orleans' black newspaper, the Louisiana Weekly, published a running count of the drownings each summer. Finding a place to have fun in the summertime was a huge problem in general for black people across the United States. Segregation kept them out of many public parks and pools. W.E.B. Du Bois called it the color problem of summer. That was the title of his article in the NAACP's magazine, The Crisis.
To the American Negro, there comes, of course, the additional problem of race discrimination in amusement. And it comes most awkwardly because when one is searching for rest and renewal of strength, this is about the last time that one wants to settle social problems, or indeed to come in contact with them.
Finding a place to swim was especially difficult, he wrote, and he zeroed in on New Orleans and its lack of beaches.
New Orleans Negroes are practically shut out from the sea and parks.
Black leaders at the time tried to convince the city to give black people a beach of their own. One minister said the city accommodated ducks and geese before it accommodated black people. In 1938, the wealthy owner of a fruit company donated a portion of the lakefront for a blacks-only beach. Lincoln Beach opened in 1941, but it was far from perfect. One observer described the water as, quote, reptile-infested. A report from the city's own health director said it was not clean enough to swim in. Fishing camps and a nearby canal dumped raw sewage into the water.
You would get out along the seawalk and get into the water. It wasn't as fresh as, because I knew I'd come home with red eyes.
People complained. And then, in the 1950s, Lincoln Beach got a $500,000 renovation. That's almost $6 million by today's standards. The renovated beach reopened to huge fanfare. Thousands of people were there. Papa Celestin's Tuxedo Jazz Band was playing. There was even a Miss Lincoln Beach pageant that first year. The new version of the beach had a dance pavilion, a new restaurant, a bathhouse with 2,000 lockers, and amusement park rides. They also put in 3 large swimming pools so that people didn't have to swim in the dirty water.
I couldn't swim, but I'd always get in the pool. The locker rooms were very nice. I do remember you had to have at least a couple of bucks once you got there to buy food, and you had to pay for each ride.
The beach was advertised and celebrated in Black magazines and newspapers. It became a destination for Black people across the South and a music hub for Black artists like Nat King Cole and Fats Domino.
There was music, I think, on maybe Wednesday or Thursday nights. One of the local Black radio stations would broadcast from there, and it'd be singing contests. I think I remember Ray Charles being there once. I wasn't there.
Hey, mama, don't treat me wrong. Come and love you, daddy, all night long, all night long.
But, coming from nothing, it was certainly nicer than what we had had.
But the main thing Raphael remembers is the stark difference between Lincoln Beach and the White Beach, Pontchartrain Beach. Raphael says the amusement park rides at Pontchartrain Beach seem safer, the facilities nicer, the water cleaner. He wasn't allowed to go there because he was Black, but he noticed it from the commercials.
On television, I kept seeing these pictures of Pontchartrain Beach, and it was so much nicer.
So is that also what you remember the jingle from? Was the
Pontchartrain Beach, you'll have fun the rest of your life.
It was this sort of thing that led Raphael to become a civil rights activist and then a history professor. Today, he's a professor emeritus at the University of New Orleans, and he says Lincoln Beach was separate but never equal.
Maybe if I had not seen the difference, it would not have registered as much with me.
Like schools, swimming pools and beaches were a battleground for the fight to end segregation, especially in the South. Just one state over, in Biloxi, Mississippi, civil rights activists organized history-making protests called wade-ins. Black people gathered on a supposedly public beach, but they were attacked by white mobs and arrested by the police. In the late 50s and early 60s, federal courts ordered the city of New Orleans to desegregate its parks and public facilities. Both Audubon Park and City Park chose to close their pools rather than integrate. Then the Civil Rights Act passed.
Now, in this summer of 1964, the Civil Rights Bill is the law of the land. In the words of the President, it restricts no one's freedom so long as he respects the rights of others.
The 1964 Civil Rights Bill forced New Orleans to integrate Pontchartrain Beach. And then, a month later, Lincoln Beach closed. The thinking was, after integration, the beach would lose money. People would choose the nicer, formerly whites-only Pontchartrain Beach instead. The Lincoln Beach Corporation had even prepared for this. Their lease with the levee board specifically said they could end their contract if they couldn't keep the beach segregated. Raphael's family started going to Pontchartrain Beach instead. The whites-only beach responded to Black families like Raphael's by closing its pool, installing a fence around the park, and requiring people to pay for entry. But Pontchartrain Beach eventually closed too, in 1983. It took a while, but over time, people stopped going there as much.
Popular opinion has deemed this piece of history obsolete.
One reporter at the time said, people had ways they could entertain themselves at home instead.
In this modern age of computer games and TV, there seems to be just too many other things to do. So on Saturday, September 24th, 1983, Pontchartrain Beach closed its gates for the last time.
So New Orleans no longer had any more beaches. Historian Andrew Carl studies the history of beach access.
In a sense, sort of what happened to Lincoln Beach was a harbinger of things to come across the South.
Carl says after integration, funding was immediately pulled from lots of Black spaces, forcing them to close. When Black people started going to the newly integrated white spaces, white people no longer wanted to use them. Andrew Carl says that sent them elsewhere.
Middle class and sort of more privileged whites who can afford to into private spaces, whether they be private swimming clubs, golf courses, other sort of private amenities.
And because of that retreat, over the years, those newly integrated spaces, true public spaces, started to close.
That really sort of opened the floodgates to this disinvestment in public recreation and public recreational facilities that we've seen unfold over the second half of the 20th century and continuing to this day.
Carl says we're still losing beach access, especially for people of color. Some beaches are becoming private beaches. For others, local governments are making it harder to reach them. Carl says public beach access has been under attack for decades.
And I think, especially in coastal cities or cities like New Orleans that just, have, are surrounded by bodies of water. I mean, that is a really critical area of need that is going unmet.
It's been 60 years since Lincoln Beach closed, but the residents of New Orleans East never really gave up on the idea of reopening it. They even came close in the late 90s and early 2000s. Back then, the push came from a community group called All Congregations Together. For a while, it seemed like the project was going pretty well. The levee board promised $1.5 million for a new pier, according to an article in New Orleans Magazine. It also commissioned plans for the beach, a new pavilion, restrooms, a playground, and a mural depicting its civil rights history. But things just kept getting stalled. The levee board and the city argued over who was responsible for the beach. The city found contamination and pushed off construction. And they also lost paperwork for the demolition. Then, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. And those plans for Lincoln Beach were left behind. And it would take another few decades to get that close again.
Why haven't you learned anything?
Don't know about your household, but my kids are getting ready to return to school. And a new survey finds that many teenagers do not feel challenged in school. They worry they're not being prepared for the future. NPR's Corey Turner's been looking at the results. Corey, good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Which group of kids are we talking about?
We are talking about Gen Z. So these are teens and young adults between 12 and 27,
Okay.
although I am just going to focus on those who are now in middle and high school. So this survey is part of a relatively new project from Gallup and the Walton Family Foundation. And two quick disclosures here, Steve. Walton is a funder of NPR, and I have a Gen Zer in my house who I love very much.
Same. So we got skin in the game, but we're going to call it straight. Go ahead.
The big headline for me from this survey is that Gen Z teens are feeling less engaged by school. Nearly every measure of school engagement on this survey declined this year compared to last year. For example, big drop in how many students say they recently learned something interesting at school. Now, obviously, kids are not always going to love school, but a 10-point drop in 1 year among the same kids, that's worrying.
Something happened, according to this survey, that makes them feel they're getting less out of the experience. What's behind that?
Well, it's not entirely clear. One thing that caught my eye, though, is a big engagement divide between teens who say they plan to go to college and those who don't. So of those planning to go to college, which is about half of Gen Z teens, the overwhelming majority say they have a great future ahead. They're optimistic. But more than 4 in 10 Gen Z students say they don't have college plans, and they are a lot less optimistic. Now, obviously, there are a bunch of reasons for this gap, but it is not because you have to go to college to feel good about the future.
Although there is a kind of path that feels clear to many people of going to college and getting a good job, maybe a little less so in the other way. But what are the reasons behind the optimism gap?
Well, I think part of the problem here, Steve, is schools aren't doing a good job laying out that path. You know, the students who say they don't want to go to college say their K-12 schools aren't helping them imagine the lives they do want. For example, only about 40% of non-college bound Gen Zers say they feel challenged in class in a good way. They're also less likely than college-bound teens to say there's an adult at school who makes them feel excited about the future or even encourages them to pursue their dreams. Part of the problem, these teens say, is school staff spend a lot of time talking about college, but not alternatives. Here's Zach Gronowski. He's a senior education researcher at Gallup.
Even the kids who are like, I don't want to go to college, what are they hearing the most about? College. We're not talking to them about apprenticeships, internships, starting a business, entrepreneurial aspirations, jobs that don't require a college degree.
Now, Steve, in school's defense, I should say this mismatch was largely born out of good intentions, wanting kids to believe college can be for anyone.
Yeah, and this is part of a big national discussion. People emphasize that your life is much better. You make more money over time if you have a college degree. But do educators need to change their message for the large number of Americans who just aren't going to go to college?
I mean, I will say there has been a lot more talk in recent years about what's called career and technical education. It was a big priority under President Trump, under President Biden. I should also say Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Vice President Harris's running mate, last year eliminated the need for a college diploma for 3/4 of his state's government jobs. Still, this survey makes clear lots of teens want to dream big just without college, and schools need to do better by them.
NPR education correspondent Corey Turner, thanks for the insights, Corey.
You're welcome, Steve.
And good luck to the kid.
Globalization mandates, of course, from the most powerful white people, these blackouts. You have a totally energy-independent state like Texas, plenty of natural gas, oil, gasoline, coal. They were forced to keep up with the mandates and convert up to 20% of their power grid to green energy by 2021. Green energy being wind, solar, hydro, battery, etc. So that 20% freezes over. And the 80% that's left, that always has worked, the oil, the coal, the gas, is not enough to supply the rest of the state. So they have to cut off certain parts of the grid to keep it working. And this is what's going to happen in 2025 when that green energy is mandated to be 50% of the grid. What happens when we have a snowstorm then? And what happens in Chicago and New York? I mean, it's cold most of the year here. So it's big. This green energy thing that they've been pushing through this Green New Deal, and 5 years ago, this wanted to happen in Texas. But they were forced to take fully, perfectly functioning parts of their grid and convert it to these green energy. And now that green energy freezes over and the rest of the grid is all vulnerable.
It has been hot in Texas this week, with the heat index surpassing 110 degrees in many parts of the state. Cities are opening cooling centers, nonprofits are passing out fans. But you know, the state's power grid has held up despite long-standing concerns about the grid's readiness. KUT's Mose Bushell has this report.
Texas is known for its hot summers, but this week has been something else.
This year we saw a delay in the extreme heat, but it's here for sure. 10 straight days in triple-digit territory, and this hot spell will continue.
Anxiety about the power grid has been a fact of life ever since a catastrophic statewide blackout in the winter of 2021. Since then, frequent energy conservation requests from state officials, almost a dozen last year alone, have kept Texans worried. But so far, the system has hummed along even as energy demand hit record highs this week.
And no conservation alert, the lights stayed on and the air conditioners stayed rolling.
Joshua Rhodes is a research scientist at UT Austin who studies the grid. He says a rapid build out of solar farms and big utility-scale batteries have been key.
So if you look at last year, we had about 12,000 megawatts of solar online. And this year we had 20.
That's about enough electricity to power 5 million homes on a hot Texas day. And some of it goes into those large-scale battery facilities that send it back to the grid after the sun sets, when demand is still high.
As well as, thousands of megawatts more batteries around to be able to discharge later in the day.
But challenges remain. State grid operators predict a continued massive increase in electric demand as the population grows and the oil and gas sector expands. In addition, power-hungry data centers and artificial intelligence facilities are adding to the pressure. And while the statewide grid is held this summer, big storms have brought devastating local power outages to cities. Professor Daniel Cohan teaches environmental engineering at Rice University in Houston.
The majority of blackouts don't come because the grid runs out of juice. They come because
lines go down, transformers go down. We have outages in local neighborhoods, and our power grid is an embarrassment in those ways.
He points to Hurricane Beryl that knocked out power to millions for days in the Houston area last month, prompting lawmakers to start a review of state utility policies. Cohan says local outages are a problem that will only get worse as climate changes bring more devastating storms to the region. For NPR News, I'm Mose Buchel in Austin.
Sam Altman, the co-founder and CEO of OpenAI, has become the figurehead of the artificial intelligence revolution. At the same time, one of his other projects, WorldCoin, is aiming to save society from an AI-dominated world. But governments around the globe are raising concerns about WorldCoin's efforts to scan the eyeballs of every person on Earth and pay them in cryptocurrency. Today, we're bringing you that story. Sam Altman's WorldCoin initiative says it's addressing a potential risk. In a future where AI models might outsmart humans, how do you tell robots and humans apart? But more than a dozen jurisdictions around the globe have suspended WorldCoin's operations or looked into the way it handles user data. Our reporter Angus Barrick is with us to talk through the project's strategy and the regulatory issues it's facing. So Angus, first off, how does the WorldCoin project, which is made up of WorldCoin and a company called Tools for Humanity, work? How does it verify humanness?
WorldCoin, so they've manufactured these kind of basketball-sized chrome orbs. And within each orb, there's a kind of a very sophisticated camera. What happens is that users, they stare into the camera kind of takes a very kind of high-quality image of their iris, and it then converts that image into a kind of a numerical code, a string of kind of ones and zeros. The code is then connected with a person's world ID, which is their kind of online passport. And you can then use that passport on other social media sites, such as Reddit or Shopify, and that will then verify you as a human. And for each person that kind of goes through this verification process, they receive a payout in WorldCoin's own cryptocurrency, which is called WLD. There's two companies here. They launched Tools for Humanity to build the technology, and then they set up a Cayman foundation, the WorldCoin Foundation, which manages the data, the kind of the token issuances, and the IP. The totality of this is normally referred to as the WorldCoin project.
What can users do with the cryptocurrency that they're given for signing up for WorldCoin?
So WorldCoin say that at least what they want to happen is that people will use WLD, the cryptocurrency, in order to pay for real-world items, perhaps food and services. Sam himself has said that he kind of envisions WorldCoin as becoming this kind of globe-spanning financial network in which governments would be able to use to issue a universal basic income to people whose livelihoods have been disrupted by AI. But at the moment, I mean, what I can see from my reporting is that the way that WLD is being used today is pretty far from those ambitions. Like the trading volume in it daily is mainly speculative.
How is WorldCoin handling all the data it collects on the users who sign up for it?
So there are basically kind of two pools of data which WorldCoin collects through its operations. There are the iris codes, these strings and ones and zeros, each one which refers to, a person's unique kind of iris signature. These codes, at least kind of under the current system, WorldCoin splits each code up, and each kind of segment of the code is held on a different encrypted data store. And WorldCoins say that for someone to kind of break into this database, they would need to break into each data store separately and also obtain all the kind of the encryption keys, which they say, would be a kind of monumental task, and that thus these codes are being kept, in a very secure way. The other pool of data is that users have the option to opt in and share their original iris image with WorldCoin, which WorldCoin will then use to train their algorithms, which are learning how to recognize different people's irises. And this is where quite a lot of the controversy has stemmed from, because several regulators and kind of privacy advocates have accused WorldCoin's operators, who are the kind of independent contractors that manage the orbs. They've accused these people of inducing users to hand over this data. WorldCoin now say that, they've put a lot of resources and time into training, and that as of this moment, no operators are being trained to encourage people to hand over that data. If people want to hand over that data, then that's up to them.
Sam Altman didn't comment for your story, but what have the sources you've spoken to said about his involvement in WorldCoin's operations?
So the people that that I've spoken to who've worked there said that he, on a day-to-day basis, he is not that involved. He co-founded it. He's chairman of Tools for Humanity, the service provider. And in terms of kind of the overall vision of the company, that is very much plays a kind of key role in kind of world that he wants to build.
Across the sea, I suppose they're free. I suppose they're free outside of this place known as Chicago. Known as Chicago. Known as Chicago. Known as Chicago. Chicago. What you doing to me, Chicago? Running it at me, Chicago. Running at me. What you gonna do in Chicago? What you gonna do in Chicago?
Well, we look now at how the city has a long history of police torture under Police Commander John Burge, who is accused of leading a torture ring that interrogated more than 100 African-American men in Chicago in the 1970s and 1980s. They routinely used electric shock and suffocation with plastic bags and typewriter covers, among others, methods to extract confessions from men who were later shown to be innocent. This comes as Illinois has one of the highest rates of wrongful convictions in the United States, and a disproportionate number of the wrongly convicted are black or brown people.
For more, we're joined by two men from right here in Chicago who were exonerated after serving decades in prison. Stanley Howard spent 16 years of his life on death row for a 1984 murder that evidence would later show he did not commit. He says he was tortured until he confessed to the crime. He's the co-founder of the Death Row 10, a group of black men on Illinois' death row who were tortured by the notorious Chicago police commander John Burge and his detectives. Howard was pardoned by Governor George Ryan in 2003. He co-authored the book Tortured by Blue, the Chicago Police Torture Story. We're also joined by Jimmy Soto, who was released from an Illinois prison just this past December 14th after a 42-year fight to prove his innocence. At the time of his release, Jimmy Soto was the longest-serving exonerated prisoner in Illinois history. Now he's working on getting a law degree to help others like him. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! It's an honor to have you with us. As you both actually just recently got out, I don't know if people remember what happened in the expose, and he even went to court and was convicted of perjury, lying about the cover-up of torture of black men in Chicago, John Burge. But you were one of those victims. If you can talk about what happened to you and what it meant to serve more than 40 years in prison, Stanley Howard.
Well, what happened to me was a crime. I was tortured on November the 1st, November the 2nd of 1984. What I mean by torture, I was handcuffed with my hands behind my back. And that set of cuffs was cuffed to a ring on the wall. And these three detectives literally beat the heck out of me. When I refused to sign a confession to a crime I did not commit, they suffocated me with a plastic bag and later a typewriter cover. I thought these three white detectives were actually trying to kill me. Mind you, I was 21 years old, scared half to death, and in fear of losing my life inside this interview room. at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I actually agreed to sign a confession to a crime I did not commit. I later discovered, when evidence started coming out, that I was not the only one. And at that time, I was assured that justice was going to prevail. I did not know that all three branches of government was either complicit in the scandal or worked to cover it up or just simply turned a blind eye to what was going on. Maybe because they didn't care. As long as they was attaining convictions, that's all it was about. I ended up on death row, and the courts kept seeing cases after cases after cases of the same officers' names and the same techniques, but they kept denying all of the appeals. So I wanted to take the argument from behind the closed doors of death row, and I wanted to take it to the streets. I wanted the people, if the people was willing to hear our stories and allow the state of Illinois to execute us, so be it. So I started the Death Row 10. And that campaign, we reached out to the campaign to end the death penalty, and they helped us facilitate our public fight, if you will. And based on that, we started getting more movement, especially with Anthony Porter, who was released from death row after spending years and years on death row and was 30-some hours away from being executed. This is the time that we started the Death Row 10, along with the time that Latanya Haggerty, a young girl that was killed by Chicago police because she had a cell phone in her hand.
And you actually, while the time you were in prison, you became a jailhouse lawyer helping so many other inmates. Can you talk about the experiences that you had there helping to mount the legal arguments and the basis for yourself and others eventually being freed?
Well, I had the experience of working with my appellate lawyer, who was horrible. So I started studying criminal law myself. I didn't get any formal education, but I trained, I studied, and I studied, and I studied. And I got to the point where I wanted to have a say in my life, my appeals. And I believe I got to the point where I wanted to help other guys on death row also, which is why I started the law class, so-called law class. And based on the law class, we was able to get together, formulate arguments, organize, and push our fight, not just for the Death Row 10, but to counter the claims of the death penalty here in Illinois. At one point, we had 12, 13 guys executed, but we had 12, 13 guys released from death row. So that tells you something is wrong. And through my advocacy, it wasn't just simply about me. I wanted to help the other guys that I was there with, to help save their lives also. Because I believe a government like this government should not be in the business of executing people under any circumstances.
You were on death row for how many years?
16 years.
16 years.
Locked inside of a cell 23, 24 hours a day, every day. Torture. So I was tortured by cops. Then I was tortured by the state of Illinois.
And now you are free. Former Republican Governor George Ryan, governor of Illinois, commuted 167 prisoners on death row to life in prison. And then you have, before that, after that, on 2011, Democratic Governor Pat Quinn signed legislation that made Illinois the 16th state to abolish the death penalty. Shimmy Soto, I want to turn to you. Congratulations on being out, but the horror that you were in for over 40 years, the longest held prisoner, exonerated prisoner in this country. Tell us your story.
Well, you know, it happened in 1981 on the southwest side of Chicago in an area called Little Village. A tragic shooting occurred, and I gave it no thought that it would ever come on my doorstep. Unfortunately, the police, as Stanley was pointing out, in that time period, used tactics in which they wanted to just close a case. And so being pressured by those in authority in the city of Chicago, they set out to try to just solve the case in a way that skirted any legal methods that they should have done. They rounded up approximately 25 people from that area, 20 of which were under the age of 17. So just think of that. These are juveniles. Held them for 3 days and got them to make false statements on me. They took them to the grand jury and they put the case on me. There was no evidence, physical, forensic, no eyewitnesses. They managed to get one individual to stand up and be what they say, quote unquote, an accomplice witness. And years of fighting, like Stanley, I was self-taught prison litigator. Over the course of that time, I managed to get 2 people fully exonerated, and I was able to get over 300 sentence reductions and 14 new trials. But, you know, the actual fight was to get me out. And eventually that happened. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy task. And I never want to see anybody go through that. Unfortunately, like as you indicated, Juan, at the beginning of the show, that Illinois has some of the highest numbers of exonerations. I went to an exoneration conference in Louisiana shortly after I was released. And by far, Illinois, in just 1 year, exceeded any other state for exonerations. And when I looked at the whole room and seen those thousands of people that have been exonerated over the years, it's a clear red flag that there's something seriously wrong with our criminal justice system.
And also, Illinois is a state that does not have parole for folks who are in prison. Can you talk about that and what that does in terms of people staying in longer?
Yes. As I was sentenced to natural life without parole, which is a slow death by incarceration. And during that time in there, we started, I was going to school. I went to the Northwestern Prison Education Program, but I also joined PNAP, the Prison Neighborhood Arts Project. And there was a think tank. And in that think tank, individuals said, hey, there is no parole in Illinois. We need to do something about it. And right there was a effort birthed, which we wanted to have paroleillinois.org. And we formed a nonprofit organization to bring back parole. There's been no parole in Illinois since 1978. And there's a lot of people who have, quote unquote, been rehabilitated, yet they linger for decades in the most horrible conditions. Because it's not only the fact that I did 42 years, 2 months, 2 days, it's the conditions in which I did it. As Stanley indicated, it is really slow torture every day.
And you mentioned also discussions we had yesterday that you also were organizing within the prison in terms of the Latino prisoners. For a while, you spent time with some of the FALN pro-independence folks that were in prison as well?
That's correct. You know, Luis Rosa in particular, as I said, there was programs giving you higher education, but they had nothing to give us an education about our history of Latinos. And so we decided to formulate the Latino Cultural Exchange Committee, which was an independent program, which we now start to bringing the history of Puerto Rico, Mexico, Central America, South America, and bringing it to those and to awaken within them some dignity and some pride in their heritage.
Well, I want to thank you both again. Jimmy Soto, longest-serving exonerated prisoner in Illinois history. Since his release in December, he's been working on going to law school, getting a law degree to help others like him. And Stanley Howard, co-founder of Death Row 10, spent 16 years of his life on death row for a 1984 murder that evidence would later show he did not commit.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
On Wednesday afternoon, supporters of Marcellus Williams were relieved. A deal reached with prosecutors meant he would not be executed for a 1998 murder they believed he did not commit. But the deal fell apart in less than 24 hours. That means Williams could be executed on September 24th. St. Louis Public Radio's Rachel Littman and Jonathan Ahl lay out the legal twists and turns in this case.
Rachel, remind us the origins of this deal.
Williams was convicted of a 1998 murder based largely on the testimony of a former girlfriend and a jailhouse informant. There was never any forensic evidence that connected him to this crime, things like fingernails, hair, DNA, although he did have possession of some of the victim's belongings. Williams and his supporters have always maintained his innocence, and back in January, St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell used a 2021 state law to file a motion to vacate, basically saying, I no longer have faith in this conviction and I want to throw it out. The bulk of that hinged on DNA testing of the knife that had been used as the murder weapon. Basically, Bell argued this excludes Marcellus Williams as the murderer. But it turns out that that knife had been contaminated. It had been mishandled by the previous prosecutor's office and could no longer exclude Williams as the suspect. That came out in a court hearing on Wednesday, and that is what prompted the negotiations on this deal to begin. The terms of the deal were Marcellus Williams would plead no contest to that murder and instead be resentenced to life rather than to death.
So what led to everybody agreeing on this, but then it being reversed?
Attorney General Andrew Bailey objected to this deal in court. The law that governs the motion to vacate gives him the right to come in and question witnesses and make objections in court in the same way that the state would in a normal criminal case. Bailey then filed a request with the Supreme Court of Missouri asking them to halt the deal. The Supreme Court of Missouri agreed to do so and gave the judge in the case, Bruce Hilton, two options. He could either throw out the deal and proceed with the evidentiary hearing in the motion to vacate, which was what had originally been scheduled for Wednesday, or he could argue why he had had the authority to accept the deal. Bruce Hilton took option 2. He withdrew the deal and rescheduled the evidentiary hearing. That's now set for August 28th.
So how's everyone reacting to this deal being in place and then being pulled back?
Bailey called the pullback of the deal a victory for the rule of law. He had argued that you cannot call something a consent decree if all of the parties in the case do not agree to the deal. And in this case, he did not accept the deal. He wanted the case to continue to go forward so that he could prove what he believes is Williams' guilt. But Nimrod Chappell, who is the president of the Missouri NAACP, says Bailey is improperly inserting himself into local government.
You have a good prosecutor there in Wesley Bell with the St. Louis County who brought this case because he knows, like we know, that Khalifa Marcellus Williams is innocent. He's the person that's elected to represent that community.
And Tricia Bushnell, who's the executive director of the Midwest Innocence Project and an attorney for Williams, also agrees that Bailey's actions contradict the will of a duly elected prosecutor, Wesley Bell, and the victim's family, who want closure and oppose Williams's execution.
Does Wesley Bell no longer think that the conviction is not valid because of that change in DNA evidence?
Attorneys for his office acknowledged in court that there had been mistakes in the handling of the knife by the prior office, and that could undermine confidence in the conviction of Marcellus Williams.
So what happens next then?
At the hearing on August 28th, attorneys for Williams, Bell, and Bailey will present their evidence. Judge Hilton has until September 13th to issue his findings. Vacating a conviction requires, quote, clear and convincing evidence that a defendant is innocent or that there is a constitutional error undermining faith in the judgment. Williams is set to be executed September 24th.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Filed in the case of an Atlanta airman shot and killed inside his own home.
Former Okaloosa County Sheriff's Deputy Eddie Duran is charged with manslaughter. Back in May, investigators said he shot Senior Airman Roger Fortson 6 times. Fortson was armed but never raised his gun. Atlanta News First Madeline Montgomery is live tonight.
And Madeline, Fortson's mother is speaking only to you tonight.
That's right. Shantamika Fortson tells me that she worried about her son when he would deploy while in the Air Force, but she never worried about his safety when he was home.
Son, I will hold you in my heart until I can hold you in heaven. That was us when he graduated from San Antonio.
A mini museum dedicated to a life taken too soon. It's all Shantamika Fortson has left of her son, Roger.
He was like, I'm sorry, but Roger is no more.
Senior Airman Roger Fortson was only 23 years old when authorities say he was shot and killed by Deputy Eddie Duran when he answered the door to his apartment in Fort Walton Beach holding a handgun by his side. Deputy Duran was at the apartment in response to a domestic disturbance report that turned out to be false, according to officials.
When they killed Roger, they took a son, they took a brother, they took an uncle, they took a U.S. airman. They took a U.S. Special Operations airman.
Duran was fired later that month from the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, but that was not enough for Fortson's family, loved ones, or even strangers who heard about his story.
There was so many people that don't even know me, didn't even know him, that shedded tears. It was so many. And because of those people, I felt like we got what we needed.
Duran has been charged with manslaughter with a firearm. The charge is a first-degree felony punishable by up to 30 years in prison.
And the most important part, we got it the way my baby would want it. We didn't burn nothing down. We didn't try to kill nobody. We didn't fight anybody. We got it with love.
The Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office put out a statement saying, in part, "We continue to wish Mr. Fortson's family comfort and peace as the former deputy's criminal case proceeds." Reporting live in Midtown, I'm Madeline Montgomery, Atlanta News First.
That if you want ultimate expression of white supremacy and the white supremacist mentality, and you want to put it in the form of one person that I would name, and that's something I very seldom do, it would be Jeffrey Dahmer. He's the ultimate expression of white supremacy. Everything that he was doing, working in a chocolate factory, the whole 9 yards, storing black male bodies in canisters of lye and alcohol and whatnot, got them in the refrigerator, and cannibalism and all of that, and calm, very methodical, even when questioned by the law enforcement officers, very calm. Hannibal Lecter.
Frozen femurs in the freezer. Jeffrey Dahmer.
Police are owning in on dating apps. That's what newly unsealed court documents show as investigators dig into the killing of Sade Robinson.
Bill Miston shows us the search for answers about how she met her accused killer.
Millions of people use dating apps. Others perhaps maybe go to a local bar to meet people. But those are two areas investigators honed in on in the months after Sade Robinson was last seen alive. Investigators have been trying to connect how the 19-year-old woman and her accused killer, Maxwell Anderson, met. According to newly unsealed search warrants, investigators subpoenaed Anderson's employment records for Victor's, a Yankee Hill bar. A co-worker of Robinson's told investigators the two would go there because Victor's never checked or asked for any identification. Filings say a cell phone video from a friend showed Robinson in the bar on March 30th, the day before she was last seen alive. Investigators also subpoenaed video from the bar to see if the two interacted at any point. Previously unsealed warrants say a confidential informant told investigators Anderson said he intended to kill Sade Robinson, forcing her at gunpoint into his basement, shooting, and then dismembering her before disposing of the body throughout the city. A woman who went on a date with Anderson in February said she believed Anderson drugged her drink. As investigators sought to put together a timeline and connections, they also subpoenaed dating apps they believe Anderson used. When investigators searched the house in April, they found handwritten usernames and passwords in a folder labeled dating. In Milwaukee, Bill Miston, Fox 6 News.
Anderson's criminal trial is set for December. Robinson's family also has filed a civil lawsuit against Anderson.
The mobs were feral rats.
I saw an image of a boy, a black boy making a white boy stripped in the street. To me, those things are reprehensible. And those people should have more than the book thrown at them.
His prophecy was absolutely right.
I'm ashamed to be a black guy seeing a lot of young other black people causing this trouble and bringing our names down.
Racist riots that erupted across the United Kingdom in the first half of August were ostensibly aimed at Muslims, immigrants and the police. But for many black Britons, it also reignited memories of racist violence by the far right during the second half of the 20th century.
Are we in 2024 or 1974?
That's Ngozi Fulani, the CEO and founder of Sister Space, an African and Caribbean heritage charity in East London. The organisation boarded up its windows as supporters warned them that far-right rioters were headed that way. The riots were fuelled by misinformation spread online that the suspect in a deadly knife attack was an Islamist migrant. 3 little girls, Elsie Stancoom, Alice Da Silva Aguiar and BB King, were killed during that incident. As well as white rioters attacking hotels housing asylum seekers, immigration centres, mosques, police officers and shops, videos also circulated online of white men attacking people of colour across the country. That includes a group badly beating a black man in Manchester. Kaushik Mistry is the founder of the Anthony Walker Foundation, a charity combating racism and hate crime.
Suddenly, you're a prisoner in your own home, in your own country, in the place where you live and work and contribute to that society. It's incredibly unhealthy. That result of the last week's actions have caused that for people.
Mistry said the foundation would normally have up to 50 referrals a week. But in the first 2 weeks of August, more than 300 people affected by race and religious hate approached his charity.
A moment of reflection after a week of unrest. Here in Liverpool, at the oldest mosque in the UK, many still feel anxious. Racist riots rocked the country after false claims began spreading online that the perpetrator of a mass stabbing in nearby Southport last month was a Muslim immigrant. Now, one word keeps coming up here.
Paranoid. Paranoid of whoever I'm with, paranoid around, my train, my commute, even my Uber. And, that in and of itself is quite psychologically, traumatizing, isn't it?
Imam Adam Kelwick is trying to reassure worshippers here after mosques, immigration centres and stores owned by Muslims were targeted.
There's this us and them in society, and everybody stays in their own corner and they demonise each other and they throw stones at each other.
Adam caught global attention when he crossed the line to start a conversation with people chanting anti-Islam slogans outside this mosque.
We were expecting the worst. At the same time, we decided to do something different. I put a video online saying that, we've been told there will be protests outside our mosque tomorrow evening. We just want everybody to know who will be protesting that you are our guests and we will have food and drink ready for you, and we're willing to listen to what your concerns are.
Amid the riots, this Liverpool library was looted, leaving locals outraged.
Really disgraceful. I mean, the library, what's that got to do with it? So, yeah, I was quite shocked, really, I've got to admit.
But not everyone is surprised that the UK reached boiling point.
It's very common for riots to start with false information being spread. But then usually they build on some kind of more deep-seated social, maybe economic or political issues.
Historian Vera Toltz-Ziltinkovic says the seeds of today's discontent began after the 2008 financial crisis, then the UK's Brexit vote to leave the European Union.
We had, during the campaign around the Brexit referendum, all sorts of mainstream, non-mainstream, mainstreamed politicians kind of blaming socioeconomic problems on migrants. It resonates with certain individuals and, yeah, particularly kind of people from left behind communities.
Following the riots, hundreds were arrested across the country and jail sentences were already handed down at this Liverpool court. But at this nearby pub, some argue those involved weren't all extremists.
The media brand anyone that has any legitimate concerns as potentially, far right. Obviously there is some people that are genuinely disappointed with the state of the country at the moment, and people need to, in positions of power, need to listen to these people instead of, basically alienating them and branding them as far right.
Alienation is what Adam wants to avoid. He plans to open the mosque up and invite those who attended the riots inside to try and build bridges.
The result of all of this chaos over the last week is that my community now is communicating with parts of society who we've never spoken to before. I don't want things how they were before because we've entered into a new phase now, and I'm sure we can build some amazing relationships and alliances with people who just over a week ago thought that we were their enemies.
He's relieved that far-right extremists also seem far outnumbered here. For now, riots have been replaced by anti-racist demonstrations across the country and an outpouring of support for the UK's ethnic minority communities.
I turned the ISO up on my camera, and I have this dark photo of this flag waving, and smoke is, tear gas is coming down, and there's hardly any more people up the top. It just was weirdly over. I walked 2 blocks, called an Uber. I just remember looking at who my driver was going to be, and I was so relieved that this driver was a black man. Because I really, honestly couldn't deal with any more white folks that day. I couldn't. I was just over it.
We begin in the United States. Former President Donald Trump held his first outdoor rally after the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania just last month. Joined by his running mate J.D. Vance, Donald Trump rallied in the key battleground state of North Carolina, where the Republicans are hoping for a repeat of their 2020 election victory. Speaking from behind bulletproof glass, Donald Trump verbally attacked the Biden administration and Democrats after reporting inflated employment numbers.
Harris-Biden administration has been caught fraudulently manipulating job statistics to hide the true extent of the economic ruin that they've inflicted on America. The new data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the administration padded the numbers with an extra, listen to this one, 818,000 jobs that don't exist. So they said they existed, and they never did exist. They built them up so that they could say what a wonderful job they're doing. No, we've never had numbers like this. They don't exist.
The ex-president then called out President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama, accusing them of personal attacks on him during their keynote addresses at the Democratic National Convention here on Wednesday.
Did you see Barack Hussein Obama last night? Take little shots. He was taking shots at your president. And so was Michelle. They always say, sure, please stick to policy. Don't get personal. And yet they're getting personal all night long, these people. Do I still have to stick to policy?
Now, of course, this is rich considering Donald Trump himself is responsible for the very ugly birther movement where he attacked the nation's first black president, accusing him of not being a U.S. citizen, and other attacks that many considered racist. And Trump is now using the very same playbook as he questions the racial identity of Vice President Kamala Harris as she continues her quest to defeat him at the ballot box in November. Meanwhile, her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, accepted the Democratic vice presidential nomination on Wednesday night. Democrats clearly are riding a wave of energy and fresh enthusiasm, which can be seen all throughout this convention. In fact, since announcing her candidacy and securing endorsements from the entire party just weeks ago, the vice president has led Donald Trump in a majority of the opinion polls. In fact, several polls, including Morning Consult, YouGov, ActiVote, Ipsos, and Quantos, all show Harris holding an average lead of 3 percentage points. The Harris-Walz momentum is so striking that now they've closed the gap in traditional red states such as North Carolina and even Florida. In fact, in the last week, the only poll that showed Donald Trump winning was the one conducted by Elon Musk on his social media platform X, where over 3 million users voted and had the Republicans securing over 73% of the opinion, which clearly can't be taken serious. In fact, even Rasmussen, a traditionally right-leaning poll, shows Harris leading Trump. Now, opinion polls have been less reliable in the era of Trump. In fact, more so during the midterm elections of 2022, when just about every poll predicted a red wave of Republicans sweeping Democrats that never came to fruition. However, they do highlight the mood of the nation. And with November 5th just around the corner, what we do know for certain is that since Harris has become the Democratic nominee, the electorate has become far more engaged and excited about this year's election.
I don't even know what that means. More engaged, more excited than when they were ready to storm the Capitol after the 2020 election. We miss you, Kobe. Joe Jelly Bean Bryant. We miss you as well. Kobe Bryant Day. Kobe Bryant Day. We never get far from the black male rapist. Doesn't matter what we talk about, we never get far from raping black males. But it is Kobe Bryant Day, at least in California. 824, Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade, worthless Negro from Virginia, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy, that is information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today is Kobe Bryant Day, August 24. He wore number 8, and then he switched and wore number 24. The Lakers retired both, so 8/24, 2024. So I have been told. Very sad. All of the Kobe Bryant days have been kind of sad. Since 2020, they have all been very somber. And this one as well, since his dad just passed away a few weeks ago. So, gone too soon. I've been saying all summer, so that's 2 generations of black male how much more black male privilege can you get than Kobe Bryant? And 2 generations of NBA wealth. That's nearly impossible. Even though that is Steph Curry's dad played in the NBA too. So, you do have some of that. But 2 generations of NBA wealth, and neither Jelly Bean, Kobe, neither black male makes it to age 70. Black male privilege. Kobe Bryant Day. Compensatory call-in. Not for spectators. Let us know you have thoughts, observations on the system of white supremacy. Number to dial is 605-313-5164. The code 564943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Before we get to listeners, all that jazz, or thoughts I have on some of the notes and other counter-racist suggestions, we've been broadcasting for 15 plus years, uninterrupted, I might add. One thing I've heard for years since we came on the air. Oh my God. It's too long, 3 hours, man. A lot of the programs are 2 hours plus. Like, I am not interested in hearing no worthless Negro from Virginia talk about nothing. Racism, vegan eats, nothing for 3 hours. We are in a system of white supremacy racism where regularly individuals will devote 3 hours or more to talking about, I didn't say watching, talking about brain damage tackle football. Season hasn't even started. Will gleefully invest 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 8 hours a day, as much as possible. Don't let me get some time off from work. They'll do this for teams that aren't even good. Certainly, I will hang out for 3 hours. Pat, my homeboy, gonna get that 3P. Trilogy. KC can do it, man. Certainly, that's worth a 3-hour podcast. But I mean, they will get teams that they didn't make the playoffs. They didn't even win a game. Lousy. Been lame forever. Well, you think we gonna get it? Jets gonna get it together this year? You think? We no? Well, we gonna spend 3 hours. We gonna talk about it. Don't let me get started on video games. Ooh, that's another one. I don't mean playing Madden, because I have seen, I'm not talking about 12-year-olds. I'm talking about people with gray hair, or at least gray hair that you would see if they weren't using dye. I mean people that are people that were alive when Jonestown happened. Playing Madden, hours, watching people play Madden. Madden is a football video game. You can insert Call of Duty or whatever your game of choice is, but hours of this, and then watching people play these games and talking and all of that. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Replacing white supremacy. Hey man, you got to, can we condense it? You think you can do this in 2 hours, 5 minutes? Matter of fact, when so many people have said this, I've paused because I've been like, man, it's not like it's just me talking most of the time. We have guests and such. So when Dr. Welsing, when she's been here, sometimes she hung out for 4 hours. So when we get to the hour mark, am I supposed to say, look here, Francis. We got white genetic knowledge. We got it. Okay, look here. Netflix is on, and we got things to do. So we can't be sitting around talking about racism all day long, Francis. So 5-minute wrap. Come on, wrap it up. Dave, you remember he had on the Chappelle show, he had the wrap it up thing. You start playing it. Wrap it up, Francis. We got it. Thank you very much. Right on. We got an hour. We're gonna sit here and talk us all day long. I'm supposed to say that Neely Fuller Jr. here with us many times. 2 hours, 3 hours. I'm supposed to do the same thing. All right, Neely. Okay, yeah. We got it. Yeah. Replacing. Yeah. Still. Okay. Just give it. Wrap it up. You got any boiler? Get 10 stops. Just give us the 10 stops one time, and let's. We fast forward through all this. We got. PS5 is out now. We got things to do. You got 30 seconds. Okay, thank you. ProduceJustice.com. Neely Fuller. Thank you. We're gonna wrap this. That's really. Not to mention when we have white guests on the program. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. The other thing I always say, hey, I added this to the 10 stops. Do not waste non-white people's time and energy. I say that all the time. That applies to the cows like triple, infinity. If you're not getting constructive information, you get to the first hour, really, you shouldn't even get to the first hour. If it's not constructive, not helping you get a better grasp, what is happening in a world dominated by racism, white supremacy? What does it mean to be classified as white? What are some things non-white people can and should be doing to get this problem solved immediately? If you're not getting answer to those types of questions from this program consistently right now, they are talking NFL season is about to begin. NCAA season is about to begin. Brain damage time of year. We can find something better to do with our time and energy. Pat, my homeboy, going three-peat? I'm so excited. Compensatory Call-In. Now, speaking of suggestions, there are two. We talked about yesterday neutralizing workplace racism. Black male, privileged, said he made the error, my judgment, using logic, I don't see it as anything other than made the error of, I guess, not using appropriate discretion while listening to Neely Fuller Jr.'s content in the workplace. I think he might have been watching a YouTube video specifically about Neely Fuller Jr. or Mr. Fuller talking via YouTube. Now, I don't know if he was watching this via a company terminal. This is their machine that he's accessing YouTube on. I don't know if it was on his own phone, if it was on his own tablet, whatever. If it was on their device, that's two errors. If it was on your device and you just had, your computer out or whatever, it was on the screen and they walked up, that would still be one error, lack of proper discretion in the workplace. Talked about this in detail yesterday and have talked about this really for years with regards to if you're going to bring books, literature, pamphlets, articles, magazines, newspapers, videos, CDs, DVDs, computer where you're going to have different websites up and such, anything like that that is not related to your job, that is super dangerous. And we've got tons of examples of this. People talking about they brought in a book, especially if the content is related to racism, counter racism. Oh, but we got more examples than I got time to list of black people where they got in trouble with other white coworkers and or other non-white coworkers, even people classified as black. So I would never bring a hard copy book to your job unless it's directly related to the work you do. ISIS papers is not hanging out in the office. Code book, none of that. Now, yesterday we had a sassy caller say, Gus T, are you saying that message to the black man, I bring that to work and I'm not going to get a promotion or raise on the job? Now, if I had been, really thinking, because there's so many examples, we got that in the archives too. When did that happen? It wasn't on neutralizing workplace racism, but the first time we had Walter Beach III as a guest on the program, won an NFL championship, brain damage with the great Jim Brown. Walter Beach III almost got fired and no NFL championship. He got an interception in the championship game. Almost never happened. Why? He was on the team plane, and that's work. That's business travel. He was on the team plane, had a book. They didn't have TVs and screens and all that stuff at the time, but he had a hard copy book. What book did he have? Message to the Black Man. Cleveland Browns owner, Paul Brown, white man, went and saw that. What? I don't pay my Negro boys to be out here reading about no Elijah Muhammad. You trying to be next Malcolm X and all that? Whoa. We got Jim Brown, and I don't even like that sassy Negro. You are out. And I think he was fired. Jim Brown had to go and get him back on the team. I think he was fired about that because he went and said something. I know it was this book specifically because he said he came, white man, boss. What are you? You supposed to be illiterate to begin with, one. Now you reading but the message of the black man. Who told you you were a man even? Elijah, beat it. Now really, that tells you about, now how good was Jim Brown? I am so good. You have fired a nigger. I can get him unfired. What? And we won a championship together. In the archives, now he was on the program twice, so first time around, he gives the details at that book exact. That's why I said, like, oh my God, we have so many examples, males, females, lots of different books. Anything constructive and related to racism, you are about to be in trouble with a white person or a non-white person. That happened with the person who wrote in. They said this trouble extended to their residence. Talked about being terrorized because of studying counter-racism, I guess not having proper discretion, especially in the workplace, about, white people are not ignorant about racism, and they see you studying about all this, they might have something to say. Anyway, this person was being mistreated in their residence and asked for suggestions. I have been subject to the same sort of terrorism in the residence by white people once they find out you do anything about racism, white supremacy, and we've had other non-white people as well. Suggestions I would give, number one, for the workplace first, no retaliating. This extends beyond, but certainly for the workplace, like white people, if they are making racist jokes or leaving racist codes, like this person said they were leaving the code 88 on workplace forums and such, I would not go, hey man, I know what 88 means, and who do you think you are? And I'm not no dumb black person, and you don't be doing it. None of that. If anything, that's one I say all the time, question. Really limited, if any, statements. We don't do talking in the workplace. None of that. Question, if anything. I would take a picture, anything like that, racist jokes, nooses, codes 88. I got a YouTube video with 88, what does that mean? I would not watch that while you are at work on your work-issued device. But I would not, go and let them know that I know what it means. None of that. If anything, it might be, hey, Carl, thanks for getting my paperwork back to me. Quick question. I saw this number at the top here of the form, and I didn't know what that meant. Did you put that down? Do you know what that means? Am I getting an 88% raise? Is that what that is? Because, man, I'm excited. Ooh-wee, that'd be right on time. Do you know what that means, though? And just see what he says. And I might write it down. But that would be the maximum of anything I had to say. I would just document. And then, really, I will wait and see now how many of these forms can I pile up that have 88s on them, have 14s on them. I would just stack them up. Can I stack up 50 of these? And then go ask, what does this mean? I keep seeing it, and I thought it might be a raise or a promotion, but I don't know. What does this mean? Is it you? Is that you that's putting the 88s on there? Oh, okay. What does it mean? And have him tell you. And then write down, what does he say? Documentation. Super important for the housing component of it, because what I have termed the Voltron effect, white people, they talk to other white people, they work together to support the system of white supremacy racism. You cannot be white and be ignorant about racism. Straight quote, Neely Fuller Jr. You cannot be classified as white and be ignorant about white supremacy racism. Period. You will get in trouble with other white people. They share information to control their niggers especially. So if you're being targeted in your residence, there especially, I would not verbally escalate with a white person. If they do something, I'm not going to talk to them. Who do you think you are? You don't talk to me. Get on it. None of that. And the big thing, now once we're out of the workplace, oh man, armed white, you can cue it, White people kill for fun. I'm not going and challenging no white person, yelling at them out in the street, going to their property. We just talked about Ajika Owens' case last week. She was shot through the door. So that's something that you have to think about in a residential situation, because they'll have access easy to go to their residence and get all kinds of firearms, weaponry, and other white people. So I would not say anything. A residential situation, anything, if they're threatening, yelling, cursing, anything of that sort, document, call the police. If it's anything that is immediate danger, call the police, stay in the house, do not go outside, do not confront, stay in your locked door and just keep an eye on whatever's happening so that you can call the police and make an accurate report. If enforcement officers are called to the scene, you want a report. It might be an incident report. If depends on how serious it is, it might be escalated. You can get an official police report. The differentiation is basically if they come and they don't deem it's very serious, where they just, whatever. We came, there was nothing that they deemed serious. Everything had calmed down by the time they arrived, or if the other person left, or whatever. It might just be an incident report that we were called, or we didn't do anything, we didn't see anything, whatever. If there is evidence that something was wrong and they have to do a lot of talking, that sort of thing, it might be an official police report. You want a copy. By this day and age, as they say, they might have body camera footage. You can put in a request. The requests for the police report, incident report, body camera footage, most of that can be done online, where you don't have to go there in person for any of this. For things like if they're tampering with your mail and things of that nature, those got to make police reports. Those types of things can be done via the phone and or online, depending on your jurisdiction. But that having mail tampered with, I've done that over the phone. Even late in the evening, that's something you can call the non-emergency police line in your jurisdiction and do that via the phone, and then get a report of the incident. That'll be, official, date, time, which officer you talk to, evidence. Take pictures if there's any damage, anything of that nature to your property, vehicle, if they're leaving messages that are threatening or any of any sort, recordings, record all of that, so you'll have lots of evidence. You can get a temporary protective order if there's any sort of threat where you feel unsafe, they're trespassing or coming on your property, loitering, anything of that nature where it's becoming a safety issue, where you're feeling threatened, verbalizing threats. Temporary protective order for that. Having police reports where you've had to contact, where they've done this, where they've threatened, or they did something with your mailbox or whatever. All of that strengthens your case. Now it's not just, he said, she said. Now you have evidence that, this has been a problem. The other thing, if you go get a temporary protective order, they put that in place. It lasts, I think, it could depend on the jurisdiction, say 14 days. If anything happens during the time where that temporary protective order is in place, the police response is very different. And that's something I've experienced personally, where it's no longer, you're just worthless Negro from Virginia. It's, protective order's in place. We got to go see, because that police officer told me explicitly, if it's something in your residence, a lot of times these can be civil matters. Civil matters can become criminal matters if they continue. That temporary protective order can be a big push. This is no longer going to be a civil matter. It will become a criminal matter if you continue pestering, threatening this person after there's a temporary protective order in place. I did have that happen, and you do the same thing. Document, contact the police, police report, then you get to go back to court. They are recalcitrant, Your Honor. They have been told to behave themselves. they refuse. At that point, they can extend it. Now it won't be, this lasts for a few days. Now this could be a year. Same thing. You continue to misbehave, you could be criminally charged. And they will make it more stringent. If they have to extend and you're still misbehaving and mistreating that person, coming around, whatever it is that you're doing, fine. Now we might put in greater restrictions where you can only be within a certain distance of the person. Say you can't talk to the person. If you come and call them or talk to them or any sort of electronic communication, bam, you can contact the police immediately. That's a violation of a protective order. So those are things that I would do. Those are things that I have done to stop racist white aggression. I even got it in my court order to get it if it's even if it's your landlord, because I've had that. You can get it so it was in the court order. She couldn't even knock on my door. Get your evidence, take pictures, make reports. That hugely, hugely important if you're being mistreated at your residence. I would also say in this era, cameras have gotten so ubiquitous and affordable. Man, they have so many types of camera options available. If you are a renter, if you are a homeowner, whatever your situation is, they have a camera that will work for you, just so that you can see what's happening to the property when you're away, what's happening on the property when you're there, and then more evidence. Are they coming and loitering and snooping around? Are they coming and doing things when you're not there? Are they coming late at night and that sort of a thing? And even just having cameras, if they're visible cameras, that alone may be a deterrent. I would also say lighting. That's another thing that is so ubiquitous. If they're doing anything where they're coming on your property or anything threatening, make sure that areas around your residence, especially areas that you think might be vulnerable or areas where you think someone could lurk and for nefarious criminal purposes, just extra lighting. They have so many of those lights that are super cheap sensor lights that you can have outside. They're solar. You can just plant them in different locations around your property or what have you. Someone steps there, bang, lights up. That alone sometimes can be a deterrent. Now they're a little bit more visible and their cameras. Those two things alone can be, major game changers in terms of just your personal safety. I would alert others if you have attempted family care made, attempted friends in the immediate area within 30 minutes or so, 30 minutes drive or so, or even closer if they're walking distance, that sort of thing. Let them know, what's going on. Hey, like I said, we will sit around. Brain damage is coming. We will sit around and waste a whole Sunday watching brain damage and commercials. You could take an hour out of that. Security plan. Anything happens, bam, we do this, meet up there, call, text, code, anything. We can arrive, check things out. If you live close enough, you could even do a patrol and just walk around, see what's happening, walk through the neighborhood, see what's going on. I didn't say you have to have black leather jackets and berets, just walk around. What's going on? Observe. Have a flashlight maybe, or your cell phone. Just walk around. 2-3 people. Enforcement officers come. That's why I said, let them know. Yes, we've been having problems and just trying to be proactive. We live in a neighborhood and want to be good, safe neighbors. Invite them to join the, it'd be great to have you along. Then we'll be a little bit safer because we just got a flashlight. You got, firearms and a badge. Nigger knocker too, so it'd be great, maybe. You're not going to accuse us of throwing hot water on us, are you? Sonia Massey. Anyway, those are some of the tips. Like I said, I've unfortunately had to deal with that, and what I just said worked wonderfully for me, as wonderful as things can work, at least to mitigate greatly the racist abuse that I was experiencing. And like I said, no talking. You do not, if you get a protective order, that's not you go get your protective order. Then, now, race soldier, who you think you are? I'm tough, boy. You seen black? Nah. None of that. None because, hey, if you have to call the enforcement officers, well, you might be calling their cousin. So still in a very weak position, but from that, I have seen where that can be helpful in at least getting white people to back up, find some different ways to practice racism, white supremacy against you. Give you a little time to think about what you want to do next. Document. Photographs, document. More of that than talking. Documenting, reporting, photographing, more of that than talking. That's for the housing situation. Hopefully we don't have too many people dealing with all of that. That said, 15 years, so we've talked about, some of these different types of terrorism that non-white people all over the world experience. Hopefully we've been worthy of your time and energy. Hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com, PayPal button in the top right corner. Directly beneath the button, you'll see the links: Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. Enormous gratitude to all of the investors who've kept us on the air 15 plus years, hopefully worthy of your time and energy. You'll also see the link for the Amazon wish list under Gus T. Renegade. Enormous gratitude to all of the investors who've nabbed an item or 8 for us over the 15 years. Hopefully you've learned some constructive information from the cows. We've been accurate more often than not. You can always share with other victims of racism. Super appreciated when victims share the cows' content. Let's see. All of that said, with regards to, before I get to the news segments, let's see, one extra tidbit. There were so many news items that happened. I guess I'll come back and get to that one later. With regards to the news tidbits and what have you, let's see, they had the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this week. I do not think they got any shout outs for Rekia Boyd Lenard Clark. If they did, I missed it totally. I did see Lil John. Now, I gave great pause there. I know they had Megan Thee Stallion in Atlanta a few weeks ago for VP Kamala Harris. They were campaigning and such, and they were out twerking and all that good stuff in Georgia, which gave me pause because it was a lot of black people present. Like, this is what you think of us, just to come and twerk? And they had Lil John in Chicago. Now, I was waiting, kind of low-key hoping that he would break out into the windows, to the walls, to the sweat. That's what I was like, really? What he didn't do that one. But I mean, Lil John was at the Super Bowl, and then he popped up at the DNC like, man, this has been 2024. He is killing it. Anyway, they did not perform to the windows, nor did they have stripper poles at the DNC convention. But man, but I'm gonna tell you who they did have in addition to Lil John. So they had Oprah Winfrey, they had Al Sharpton, they had Benjamin Crump, they had Kenan Thompson, they had the Central Park Five. They didn't speak. Oprah Winfrey, the Jesse Jackson Sr., he was honored at the convention. They had Michelle and Barack Obama, John Legend, and I'm probably missing, but I mean, you get the idea. Al Sharpton, you get the idea. They had lots, I mean lots of black people. I was, kind of taken, I didn't know what to make of it. I was just kind of taken aback. Like the Obamas, I get, Jesse Jackson in Chicago, so I get Common was there too, so I get some of these people are, connected to Chicago, so I get why they had to be there. Not Lil John, I don't think. Not Al Sharpton either, I don't think. But they had a lot of black people. That gave me pause a little bit. Mostly, I can cut right to it. White people do not like the Obamas. Most white voters they did not support Barack Obama either election, 2008 or 2012. The grandsister, Dr. Welsing, she used to tell us all the time, historic number of death threats against Barack Obama. That was white people. They didn't even threaten Trump like that. All the January 6ers, they didn't threaten President Biden like that. They threatened that nigger like that who's a Kenyan. That's what I was thinking. Like, and don't get me started on Michelle Obama. I shared the link, reminded them. Remember, Google had to apologize? You would put in Michelle Obama's name and they would put up an image of a gorilla. Planet of the Apes just came out, and they resurrected that franchise in the middle of the Obama administration. 2011, which coincides with the London riots, the last time. That's what they think about the Obamas. Curious George, they had the t-shirts Curious Obama with a banana when he was running for election in 2008 and had white people out. What you mean? Racist. Everybody loves Curious George. I like you want a banana? That's what I was thinking. White people, are you serious? Putting Obama up, that's going to motivate me. Like, yes, we want to continue the proud tradition of the Obamas. Like Obamacare. Any hoodles. Again, I didn't hear. Shout out to Rekia Boyd Lenard Clark. Emmett Till. Did they mention Emmett Till this week? They did all that. Man, how about this? Lame President Biden could have came out and been like, hey, man, remember that Emmett Till anti-lynching legislation? How about that? We back in Chicago for Mamie Till, man. Anti-lynching legislation. What administration did that? Give it up for Joe Biden. Ain't what I say, if you don't support Joe Biden, you ain't black. Give it up for Joe Biden. Give it up for Joe Biden. Everybody could have lost it. Did they do that this week? Because I don't remember them. I don't remember seeing it. I don't remember no shout out for Rekia Boyd or the anti-lynching, which I thought was lame anyway, but they could have at least, that's something to brag on, right? I guess they might have turned around and asked, has it been used since you got that legislation? Hey, we got it on the books. Shh. I don't do the prosecution. That's up to them. Anyway, that was the Democratic National Convention from this week. Let's see. We had the section on the segregated beaches in New Orleans, which I thought was fascinating. We had Andrew Carl as a guest on the program in 2015. He wrote the book The Land Was Ours. He's written some other books about racism and black property, black waterfront property specifically, but we talked about Lincoln Beach in New Orleans back in 2015. I played Irma Thomas. I hope I'm doing my little part to disassociate Irma Thomas so that people don't think, oh, Irma Thomas, Black Mirror and all the goofiness with that Netflix series. Irma Thomas is the soul queen of New Orleans. That was why I played her this week when we had Benton Wishart, white man suspected racist, on the program talking about white women and their role in running the plantation selling niggers in New Orleans. Since we were New Orleans specific, Irma Thomas. And that's what white people love, selling nigger. Make America great again when we could buy and sell niggers, even white women. Let's see. In that segment, they used that taggy phrase, too, in New Orleans, the uncomfortable truth about why New Orleans has no public beaches. When I listen to that, man, and I've been in New Orleans a number of times, or at least once. Sorry, not a number of times. I've been once. Once was enough. New Orleans and Louisiana in general is really lame. How are you right on the coast? You have all those hurricanes, no public beaches, and then you got BP and all the oil spills and such. So, I mean, I don't know. Do you really want to be on the beach in Louisiana? I know circa 2010, I probably pass on that. We have to, lamest place in the, like, I'm on the plantation in Seattle, but at least they got public beaches because they got no niggers here. Anyway, No public beach, and it's directly because of racism. Incidentally, I've heard that like 8 billion times with the pools. They got whole books and libraries on that where that happened over and over and over and over and over. We're not going to swim with the niggers. We'll blow up the pool before we have them. We'll fill it with cement. We'll rope it off. We'll make them private. Incidentally, all of that, you talk about repetition. When retired firefighter in Florida, when we get serious and talk about serious things, and he dials in and says, man, I worked in all those years. We had to go out for those cases, and little black children out here drowning. Only takes a little bit of time. They could be in somebody else's pool. And he gives us those PSAs. Hey, if you got children, take that serious. Take them in swim classes. Be alert. If you got a pool, if there's a pool in your neighborhood, talk to other people and be serious about that. Be proactive about that. Not having public beaches, that contributes to drowning deaths for black children in particular, which many reports have said have spiked this year, widespread, not just Louisiana, and that lack of public beaches and swimming places, that also contributes to Olympics just passed. You keep seeing it over and over where you don't have black swimmers. We can go and dominate and take over the basketball and all the other sports. So they got black people and black people and black people, but swimming for the U.S., Mike Phelps. Not by accident. Deliberate. Centuries. Really, this goes all the way back to the plantation. We don't want slaves, but Kunta might escape if he learns the breaststroke. It's not accident. It's not ignorance. Deliberate white supremacy. We had a white guest on the program in Louisiana. He talked about when he was growing up, they dynamited the pool to keep the niggers out. And that's another one I've heard over and over and over. They got pictures in Florida where they threw acid in the pool to keep the niggers out. These were children. Acid, I said. Acid, A-C-I-D. Acid. How ignorant do you have to be a white man to get acid to throw in the pool? Now, how ignorant are you about racism? Right. That's the pool. Boom, boom, boom. That'd be a great project for the summer if you're a young black person and you can't swim, especially like, oh man, let's go to the library and get some information on why you can't swim as a black person. Summertime's over now. Let's see. They said they dump raw sewage. I can't even. They would go and dump raw sewage in the Lincoln Beach. They said they would go and. My eyes are. I'm kind of itchy. They put the raw sewage where the niggers. Let's see. In Chicago, they talked about all of the direct terrorism. John Burge and the Chicago Police Department, incidentally, part of the settlement and so-called reparations for all that, they are required to teach about all that in Chicago public schools, and they use the term accurately terrorism. White terror. I don't know if they put the white on it, but they call it terrorism, racism, white supremacy. Really, black misandry, because they were targeting black males, reminded me of the goon squad down in Mississippi. You see Emmett Till just through and through. But goon squad. I was just waiting on the chocolate sauce. We got the plastic bags, chocolate sauce, and the dildos. That's all they needed. We got the plastic bags, and they put the typewriter bag over your head, and then the cattle prods, and they would shock us on the genitals. That's old. They talked about that, John Burge and them doing that a long time ago. They put the cattle prod on your testicles. Say you did it. Say you did it. Say you did it. And then they whip out the chocolate sauce and the dildos. Did they do that too? Fred Hampton Jr. talked to some of the victims, black males, in that case, who are victims of white terrorism, having electric cattle prod on your genitals. And then you got to go to jail on top. Like that's not even the end of it. On top of that, once you come to or what have it, and now you've convicted because you confessed. Now get in there. And maybe we could do that every day since we got you in prison. Black, incidentally, again, now when they give you those lame reports about how much progress we've made against racism, those are the black males who get ignored when they've said repeatedly, we don't include people that are in prison, people that are homeless, that are disproportionately black males. All of that is excluded when they get to talking about progress. Let's see. I'll get in 2, and then we can get to folks who dialed in. I'll pick 2. Which 2 did I think were? I guess one, Sade Robinson. That's one case I'm very glad that that is why Dick Gregory, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, reading is more important than watching television, and they both talked so frequently about checking the news. Maybe you don't read the newspaper, but at least check the news. You can listen to the news, you can watch the news. They have so many different mediums to get access to information about what's happening in the world. Make some time on a regular basis for the news. Checking the news, Sade Robinson. That's how I've just been able to track just that one case. You can learn so much about white supremacy racism. When we started with that case in Dahmerland, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I said the first thing when I started hearing details about that case this spring was, you got a 19-year-old black female. She can't even legally drink. They said Sade Robinson and this suspected race soldier, a 30-year-old, I think he was 33 exactly, but in his 30s, a grown white man, he's out on a so-called date at a bar with a 19-year-old, Sade Robinson. The first thing I said was, did he swango her? What are they doing at a bar? How did she get into a bar? She's 19. He works at a bar and a bartender. Oh man, it would be so easy, like all the way through. If I get some alcohol in her, now she can't think, I swango her up, and then bam, I go get the dismembering. And now come to find out, just that report today, come to find out, oh, we go to Happy Hill in Milwaukee, which I think is a black part of town. I might be incorrect about that. I've not been to Milwaukee specifically. But we go to Happy Hill and we go to Victor's. Why do we go to Victor's? Because Victor's is known for not checking identification. Wow. That is exactly what I said immediately. Did he swango? Did he go and get some alcohol? Why do you care about checking identification unless I want to go someplace where they got alcoholic beverages? I can get some liquor and probably swango her up, slip something in her drink, and now she can't really, well, come on, we'll go to my spot, we'll sit down for a little bit, let you get your bearings a little bit, and then we'll go out and keep going, we'll go someplace else, we'll go dancing, whatever. Okay, whatever. And I mean, hey, at this point, you can't even think correctly. Who knows? Can she see? Is she stumbling? They have the video. I would love to see. Does she look like she's, walking okay, blah, 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 all of that as they exit Victor's. But I mean, dang, 19, and I'm this white man who's 33. I'm scouting. Oh yeah, I know exactly where to go, where I can get whatever I want, and they don't even check ID. Nobody would even think, whoa, no, she can't come in here. And what are you doing with this child, man? Why are you with the 19? Oh, no, mind your business, mind your business. That was, at least for me, I've been following this case and talking about this since everything happened way back when. I've listened to interviews with Sade Robinson's mom and her dad, incidentally, both of her black parents. I've listened to both of them talk, and I have said throughout this case, really from the beginning, right after I got past, did he swango her? He took her to some bar, what have you, and they should be victors. They should be sued. If I was her attempted family parent, sued right there. If they went there and he gave her some liquor or alcohol and that was, played a lawsuit right there. And even the police might, how does this place have a reputation? That's supposed to be loss of liquor license. How do you have a reputation? We don't call it around here. In a state that is notorious for locking up black people. I'm sure they get a whole lot of black people on charges for being under the influence and DUI and all that old, that is serious, but I mean, really. Anyway, with that Sade Robinson report, Dahmer land. I talked about it before. We had Rekia Tate on the program, and I said, no judgment because I'm not qualified. I don't have offspring. I would fail any test as an attempted father. For sure fail it. I mean, I wouldn't even get 50% on it. But I said, man, I am curious, did her attempted parents, did they talk to Sade Robinson about Jeffrey Dahmer? We live in Milwaukee. Did they talk to her about Jeffrey Dahmer? Did they talk to her about white supremacy racism? That's what I have thought throughout all of this. Man, like it, and those apps, they said he targeted her using those so-called dating apps. We've said for a while, hey, all those phones and such, putting a phone, iPhone and all that in a 1-year-old's hand, 2-year-old's hands, 5-year-old's hand. I just keep saying, hey, wait as long as possible. Give them a dumb phone, and this would be another case. Why are you not being cool, Mom? Why aren't you hooking me up with this phone? Everybody else has one, Mom. Dad, you're so lame. Why don't you? This is why. And then you just keep showing, because it's stacks of these and stacks of these and stacks of these. What's on these apps? What's the constructive use of these apps at 14, 15? Not to mention all the lawsuits and such. Mark Zuckerberg, they really care about us? All the lawsuits, they got pedophiles and child rapists using all these apps on Meta and everything else so they can go out, do the same thing, stalk young people, swango them up, dismember them, whatever else they're trying to do. Wait as long as possible to giving your child that smartphone. And talk to them. This is not no, I'm just a dictator, and no, talk to them on a regular basis. There is a reason for that. There is a present that we are in Dahmer land. Did you see that Netflix special? You don't have to watch it, but I mean, hey, that's what I've said. Like, that's why I talk about local history. Did Sade Rob, how much did she know about Jeffrey Dahmer? Did she think essence of white supremacy, racism? Jeffrey Dahmer? This white dude, Max Robinson, kind of looked like Jeffrey Dahmer. Different color hair, but man, same MO too. I'm targeting young children. Basically, I'm way older than they are. And exact same MO. Go out and lie to them, trick them. Oh, yeah, let's go have a good time. And then slip something in their drink, do the swango on them. Did she know about all this? Got to talk to your children honestly and often about white supremacy racism, what it is, how it works. Doesn't that idiot, what does he say? He say sobriety would be best. He says that all the time. What is the other one he says? He doesn't say it as often, maybe he should. He say worst combination in the known universe, white people, alcohol. Went to Victor's and ended up burned and dismembered. Gotta talk honestly. Racism, white supremacy, what it is, how it works, and frequently having these types of conversations with your offspring. If you're not willing to do that, you don't have to have the children. Be honest. Hey, sad to have to say that, but I mean, that is the world in which we live. You got to talk to your children about drugs too. That's not fun, right? Got to talk to them about fire safety and stranger danger. The danger is white supremacy, racism in a myriad of forms. Dating apps, the bar, in a myriad of forms. Sade Robinson, if you are in Wisconsin, my opinion, really, if you are a black attempted parent, period, you should know about Sade Robinson. Follow that case to the conclusion. Let's see. I said 2, so that's 1. Whew. I guess the last one I'll get in. We heard a little bit from the documentary The Sixth. That was Mel D, black journalist. He was at the January 6th insurrection doing photography, interviews, all that. Super dangerous assignment for a black male, privileged. And that was him who was saying that after it was all done, he got an Uber. He was glad his driver was black because he did not want to be around any more white folks. That was Mel D, black male. I thought that was important for a myriad of reasons. We read about January 6th before, and then you heard President Trump with his commentary about the DNC, President Obama, Michelle Obama, their personal attacks, and all the rest of it. We will see what happens with the election. Folks can track all that as we proceed with who they think is going to win for what have you. In my view, if I have already said I think President Trump or former President Trump, 4 more years, will win in November. In my view, if VP Kamala Harris does win, race soldiers put her in the White House, one, the January 6th vitriol, hey, you might have total repeat of that. You end up with, number 2, having a non-white person in the White House again. That's how we got Trump the first time. Like, oh my God, I could totally see another January 6th type event happening. And the exact same, what shall I call it, racial showcasing, where all that blame and what have you that we had focused on President Obama, I could totally see that happening with Kamala Harris, especially because you'd have a whole lot of white people saying that she cheated anyway. It was supposed to be President Biden, and he dropped out on that. So, I could see it being worse in terms of having a lot of non-white people who are no longer talking about their frustrations with white supremacy racism. They just blame Kamala Harris, say it's her fault, she messed it up, and blah, 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 and that sort of thing, and shouldn't care about black people. I could see that being way worse if they decide they want Kamala Harris in. But again, Gus T, former President Trump, 4 more years. They just made him wait 4 years. Number is 605-313-5164. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Make sure if you all heard, if they did mention the anti-lynching crime legislation this week, since they were back in Chicago, would be fitting, right? And or if you heard Rekia Boyd, she got a shout out. Lenard Clark, if you got a shout out, I will retract, make amends. But I didn't see that. I did see Lil John. I did see Kenan Thompson. I said, man, how serious am I to take all of this? I guess I'm not a Key and Peele fan, and I didn't like Get Out and all that. Those are not appealing cinema options for me, VGQ. But how serious am I supposed to take all this when you all wheel out Hulk Hogan and Kenan Thompson and tell me it's serious, man. We got serious politics, and you got to vote this November. What you gonna do if you? What? No disrespect to any fans of Hulk Hogan or Kenan Thompson. Childhood heroes to many. 605-313-5164. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Let's see. Folks with a hand up, proceed.
Yeah, Gus T. Victor from New Jersey. When was the last time you was in New Orleans?
2004.
2004. Okay, I was in New Orleans in 2021, and I did a boat ride on the Mississippi. I must say I was not impressed. That water smelled horrible. So I wouldn't even know where they would place them beaches. And you know, but you know, I'm not surprised. You know, one thing that I must say that I did appreciate, and I did appreciate seeing a lot of black employed people in the French Quarter area, which living in the Northeast, not so much. So that's something that I did appreciate about New Orleans, employed black people. I didn't appreciate Bourbon Street, smelled horrible, but the water, the Mississippi, smelled horrible. So I wouldn't even know where they would place a beach. No, I didn't hear with the DNC convention. I didn't hear anything about Rekia Boyd or the anti-lynching bill. I'm conflicted. I was very disturbed with the spectacle. I really didn't know what to make of it because, you know, again, this is politics. We're talking about, you know, policy. I didn't see anything about policy. If I could make a confession, and this might be incorrect, I would rather Donald Trump in office. I really don't want to see, at this moment in history, I don't want to see a person of color presiding over a what was some consider a genocide and a conflict with Russia. I say that because it makes it harder. I know people say that it's easier to talk about racism as it relates to Donald Trump. I don't even think that's true. However, I'm speaking anecdotal. With my family, it'll be harder to talk about racism, white supremacy, if Kamala Harris in office. That's just my anecdotal experience. Because it's going to be harder to explain global white supremacy. And again, you know, so even when we talk about, let's just say, what's going on in Palestine, you know, I mean, the video, I mean, just the footage is disturbing. You know what I mean? Like I just seen a report with a young child blown up, half of his body missing. They was able to revive him, and he wanted to know where his sister was, and his sister was burnt beyond recognition. He didn't even know that his sister was laying next to him. So when I seen the DNC convention, knowing this and seeing the spectacle, it disturbed me. And I understand who runs the DNC. You know what I mean? That's a white organization. But however, there's going to be a lot of racial showcasing. So to criticize the Democrats, especially when I'm talking to my family, will be me criticizing a woman of color. So for me, that'll definitely make things difficult. And even looking at the coverage of the DNC convention, I remember a while back, Gus, when I told you about Democracy Now, and now I know what it is, because I said, you know, Democracy Now has been constantly talking about the conflicts that's going on in the Middle East. They speak about racial injustice, and it just seems like they talking, and nothing changes. And you ask me, well, what distinguishes the cows from Democracy Now? Because I too talk about injustice, racism, and nothing changes. This is the thing. It's the racial. It's the racist narrowing. That's what they do. And then there's this cognitive dissonance when, in one hand, they'll criticize what's going on globally. Let's just say what's going on in Africa, what's going on in the Middle East, and they'll make these riveting reports about, alleged CIA activity. And then when it comes election time, they speak about one party as if they're the party of racists, the party of imperialism. They'll attribute the same attributes somewhat to the Democrats, but then they'll turn around and then still present the other party, meaning the Democrats, somehow as more civil, more, how can I say, a kind of gentler political party. They it's this cognitive dissonance that democracy now does. You don't get that from the Catholics. You know what I'm saying? So you call racism for what it is. If you're going to talk about imperialism, call it for what it is. So democracy now will confuse you because they'll have somebody like Noam Chomsky up there talking about imperialism, but at the same time saying that, we got to save the planet from Donald Trump. So we have to elect whatever Democrat. While right now, the Democratic elite that's in power now is presiding over possibly a nuclear powered country and acting like they don't see this genocide. And I'll close. I wasn't able, and I know this has nothing to do with none of the readings, but Gus, I wasn't able to call in Thursday, but it's amazing with this book, right? So you had Patty Hearst kidnapped. And if I recall, Jim Jones was injected himself in that kidnapping through some kind of a food program or some kind of food giveaway. So for this author not to even bring up Jim Jones, I was taken aback. I said, "Wow!" Jim Jones interjected himself into that Patty Hearst kidnapping, and also was, if I'm not mistaken, was kind of negotiating this food giveaway that they requested, and and he was in direct negotiations with government officials, and for that not to be mentioned is mind blowing. Knowing what I know. So I didn't mean to bring up the book read, but I wasn't able to call in Thursday. I just had to mention that. And so that's all I got. I'll close.
Reading more important than watching television. That certainly is, always chat about literature is always welcome during the compensatory call-in. I just keep pointing out, like, they keep, giving the exact street locations minus GPS data, but they keep saying we're on Geary, and the temple address where the Negro male suspects for the so-called zebra killings is at 1809 Geary Boulevard. The address for the People's Temple, 1859 Geary Boulevard. They're not even, listener said he looked it up on the map. They're not even a block apart. They're right next to each other. These are two large facilities, so it's not even a full street block separating them. That's why I keep saying, like, are you serious? They're walking, and even the crimes in these cases are happening right a block, 2 blocks away. You'd walk right by the People's Temple for a whole lot of this case, and it's not mentioned at all. And then, like I said, on the other side, Michael Mayer's book, where, yes, he did say, Jim Jones, in the newspaper, we'll do the negotiations, Mr. Hurst. We'll get Patty back. We think this is a disgrace, and we want to help out the People's Temple. We're about justice. Doing the and Mayor said that they looted the food when they were doing the food give-outs. They had got advance notice and would go loot so they could go and feed all the people that they were going to kill anyway and get more subsidies so that they didn't have to use any of their money, millions, to pay to feed and take care of these mostly black people. Yes, all of that was in the book that we not just read, but read, just read earlier this year. And no People's Temple, no Jim Jones mentioned in the book we're reading now at all. Fascinating. And both of the books, it's not just one book, both of the books that are written about the zebra murders, zero mentions of Jim Jones and the People's Temple. And I said convert to, Jim Jones really didn't have a lot to say about the zebra murders, which is stunning to me. That's equally suspicious. This literally, it happened on your front porch, not the backyard. It happened on your front porch. They're smacking up black people right on your front porch. Where's your zebra card? What are you doing, nigga? They protested for all kinds of goofy things. Not they went out and protested for people jumping off the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. You don't have no protest for this? Stop smacking around Leroy. Stop smacking around Lynn Swan. That's worth a protest. Nope. All of it. Jim Jones had something to do with the zebra murders. Period. They got pictures of the People's Temple and black Muslims in California kicking it tough repeatedly. Jim Jones had something to do with the zebra murders, period. That's just my conclusion. I could be wrong. More to come in the book club. And someone shared an image with me. There is a potted plant mural in Southern California of Jim Jones, current, in California, in front of a school, no less. Like, whew. White people do not care about children. In front of a school. Any hoodles, I would love to, do they teach about Jim Jones at the school? Y'all know who this fella is right here on the potted plant? What is your understanding of what this dude did in California? Whew, man, learn local history. Let's see, retired firefighter in Florida. Other folks, if you have commentary to share, do not wait till the last minute. Let's see, retired firefighter should be with us, *61 for other listeners.
Greetings, everyone. Once again, a public service announcement. This more so than anything is, sad to hear about. And I've had the experiences when I was working on that job that I was on, but still, it's something that's really tragic that happens. I can actually make these announcements once a week. Unfortunately, once again, this particular victim was I would say a year and a half, 2 years old, no older than 3, at a park. Was at a park for a party for a elderly relative. Was brought there by I think the news reported as a quote unquote stepmother. And all of a sudden lost track of the child and therefore, called law enforcement. And in turn, that's going to also alert fire rescue, of course. And they found the child in the lake of this park, one of these large parks. Very good place for hiking. I used to go out there a lot, especially with my offspring and my lady friend offspring when they were small children, because it has a farm area with farm animals on it also. I mean, you really make it a practice to pay attention. Never take your eyesight off of your children in these type of situations. That is vital. That is vital. I'm not even talking about learning how to swim. Don't lose your attention from that child or children. It's either yourself as a attempted parent or someone who you may designate because you're not there. Designate to always keep your attention, because it takes, in some cases, seconds. No later than 5-10 minutes, and it can be total disaster. As I'm mentioning now with this 2 to 3 year old female. Other than that, I have been going to a lot of memorial services. I don't know if it's based on my age or whatever, but in this particular case, it's something kind of constructive. This is one of my mother's sisters, which is an aunt. She passed away, and her memorial service was today. Good things about her. Her and her attempted husband have been together for 72 years. 72 years they have been together. And she lived into her 90s, and he is still alive. But she lived into her early 90s, and so it wasn't. To me, it wasn't a sadful-like situation, so to speak, because she accomplished a lot of things, and she was, a pretty good person to go to their home and spend the night with the cousins and whatnot, that sort of thing. So that was pretty good. Other than that, those just my tour reports, and thanks everybody for listening.
Much obliged, retired firefighter in Florida. Tragic. Young person at the lake. I've talked about it on the program whole summer and years before. Get out there, go hiking, take advantage. Summertime is waning, but take advantage. Get outside, get away from those screens, get some fresh air. You can run around, do some yoga, all that. Go to the lake, all of that. I said that, way better, but certainly keep an eye, especially if you have, small children, young people, keep an eye. You got Jerry Sandusky, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. It is dangerous. And then just, hey, they could slip, fall. Water is certainly attractive. They got all the splashing and people in boats and all that. And or you might just want to jump in and swim around yourself. But just keep an eye out. They've talked about so many places, lakes and pools, where they either don't have lifeguards at all or are short lifeguards. So areas like that where they might normally have someone on duty to kind of keep an eye out if someone falls in or an accident or something happens, might not have that now. And as he was saying, sounds like this might have been kind of a larger area. So man, just do your best. Get your child swim lessons. Again, much obliged. Mommy got me swim lessons. Get your child swim lessons. If you can't swim yourself and you're an attempted parent, you can take lessons with your child. Still, and that's a great illustration too, still learning, where you set an example for your child that, hey, this is for your whole life. There will never be a point where you know everything about anything. So learning, taking classes that are constructive, looking for things that will be helpful for the whole time that you are here on the planet. So I don't know how to swim. Bang, take the class together. Now we both know how to swim. Great. Keep each other safe out here if we go hiking or licking or whatever, boating. Let's see. The other number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. You did hear a victim in New Jersey talking about he can't really get into discussions about politics with his attempted family. They have their views about, so-called Democratic Party, what they're going to do, not do. I think very important for so-called election season. That's why I say, in the workplace, even if you work with exclusively people classified as black, even then, you're not, hanging out on the job talking about, what'd you think about the convention? Did you see Lil John? None of that. You don't know what their views are. And we've got plenty of examples of non-white people where we've squabbled and argued about politics, Obama, Trump, whomever. With attempted family. This is, not a workplace situation, but the same would about Mr. Fuller says a major component of counter-racism, I say, non-white people who are more informed, a little bit less confused about racism, white supremacy, demonstrate their information, their slightly better understanding by minimizing conflict with victims of white supremacy. We do not benefit. We do not solve problems. We are not getting closer to universal woman, universal man by nitpicking, judging, criticizing how other non-white people respond to racism. We don't. Name calling other black people. None of that is helping us solve any problems. It is wasting time. Minimize conflict with other non-white people. That is massively important. Even that's why Mr. Fuller says, let's not do all that name calling, coon and sellout and all that. He said racial showcasing. Even if I don't like what they did, I don't think they should have had Lil John at the convention this week. Well, who is to blame for? Is Lil John in charge of the DNC? That would be news to me if it is. So who is to blame for Lil John? Even who is to blame? Why are they twerking at black people in Atlanta? Who is to blame for that? Usual suspects. And I'm not going to be sitting around arguing with black people about any of that. And even Fuller said, now, hey, the reason it's at the front of the book, if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, how it works, you might think the Democratic Party is our only salvation. That racial narrowing, you have a lot of individuals classified as white, they will help you be confused and have incorrect thought. Illogic like that. He said, BFF Amy Goodman, we heard from her today, it's just the Republicans. The race is just Donald Trump. It's just the GOP. It's just the so-called far right in the UK. That's the problem, white people. Nah, man. No, man. None of that can be accurate. But if you think that way, yes, you will end up. Yep. It's just those bad white people over there are the racists. The cool, correct thinking white people that are not racist. They voted for Obama, and hey, we just got to work with them, and we go vote, and we can get some laws passed. And you're not going to vote white supremacy, racism out. We should understand that now, but apparently we do not. Still learning. Any hoodles, let's see. Our caller in Florida, commentary to share.
Yes, sir. May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I was also thinking about that segment. I think they were in the UK or in England, where I think that was a non-white person that was talking about building an alliance or something like that, building a bridge or forming relationships. And then it seemed like he was also perhaps, I guess, confused, talking about the far right and how they were having an influence on some of the protests, I guess, in front of, maybe that was like a church or something. And they were talking about the term migrant. I guess they mean non-white people. I thought about that as well, where they'll mention that far right. And so I'm thinking, so the white people they don't label as far right, I guess they're not thinking that they're racist. So they definitely know how to cause the confusion. The segment where I think that was Trump, they were speaking about who has the most percentage, I guess, in the voting polls in the different areas. And Trump was talking about, I noticed he mentioned the former president Obama. He said Barack Hussein Obama. Like, I felt like that was him practicing the racism again, like when they mentioned the birther movement. And I think it was Ted Cruz, maybe, I think that's his name, in Texas. And many of those individuals were helping support racism practice against Obama. And he said, did you see Barack Hussein Obama taking shots? I think he used that phrase, I believe, shots. And he said it at least 2 times. And then I heard them say, I believe it was Biden and Harris or something like that. And they use the word strikes. They have a striking effect on the polls or something like that. I noticed that as well. And I don't know if it's a term for that or where they use those words, where they're saying shots, violent terms like that. And, I thought there was a word for that. But other than that, one last thing I wanted to mention, that there was a recent news story I read up on where I think the lady name is Nancy Mace, a white woman, a race soldier, was saying that she didn't want to say Kamala Harris's name correctly. She said, I'll say it the way I want to say it. I think Professor Michael Eric Dyson, I think that's his name, he confronted her on that, and she said, "Oh, you're trying to call me a racist, and that's BS." She said that, well, she doesn't know how to be a woman, and this is, I wanted to share that example to show that white women do practice racism, and they help practice the system of white supremacy. And other than that, that's all I have to share. Thanks for allowing me to speak.
Wow. That was this happened on CNN. I do not watch CNN. Oh man. But apparently this happened, this exchange with Michael Eric Dyson. This wasn't just any old toothless no count white woman. This was with Representative Nancy Mace, Republican, if that means anything, South Carolina, where they were talking about all this, and she said, I'm not gonna pronounce her name, or I'll say it however I want to, and all that, which is the exact same thing that President Trump said before, and I suspect a lot of other white people, and even all the way back when President Obama was in the White House. And the name thing, I mean, I mentioned Kunta before, but I mean, that's centuries of racism too. But if we just want to talk about current history, within the last 10 years, 12 years, there's this white behavior is rife with all of that deliberate mispronunciation of black political figures, and especially vice presidential candidates, nothing they love doing more. And even, as you stated, Barack Hussein, see, told you, he old Kenyan and snuck in here and all that. He wasn't even Hussein Fosi. Got to put that in there. Deliberate. They did some of that when he was running in 2008 and 2012 as well. I think, though, that would be classified as metaphors at minimum, where they're saying, or President Trump saying, so you got these old black people out here taking shots at me. I think that's, metaphors, because it's certainly military, like you're firing a pistol, great equalizer, like they're, shooting at me, bang, bang, out here talking this, saying that about me and all that. That's what it sounds like to me, which is a lot of white language. They have a lot of those firearm metaphors in the language. Stick by your guns, taking shots at me, son of a gun. Lots of those, pistol. He's a pistol. They can just say that sometimes. I got shotgun. I mean, it's ubiquitous in white language. Again, system of white supremacy requires killing, especially of non-white people, and white people kill for fun, frequently with the gun, the great equalizer. So, I mean, that's just, I think, white culture through and through. So I think that's why, and even that metaphor specifically, invoking a black person taking shots at a white person. They had laws for years in places like Virginia where a black person, they made it illegal for a black person to even own a gun to take a shot at a white person. So all of that is, that's why I say those metaphors, they transfer, support values of white supremacy, racism, directly, indirectly, consciously, subconsciously, and all of that language of the gun that just, what was Dr. Welsing talking about again? Let's see. And the over in the UK, exactly, that it's the racists are just the white people in the far right. Exact same thing. It's not, wait a minute, all of the individuals who are classified as white, how exactly did we get in this predicament? Non-white people being terrorized again in the UK and all the rest of it. How did we get it? This is just to blame on the so-called far right. Why can't the non-racist white people, why can't you all do a better job controlling the racist white people? Nah, man, none of that makes any sense at all for how this problem is all over the world, dominates all areas of people activity, and you're just going to say it's a small little segment of white people, rogue whites, causing all this mischief. And the good, wink, wink, white people who are not racist, they're just, been powerless or stupefied to help correct all of this. Nah, man. Incidentally, I did want to, and he mentioned the young lady in the UK. She had the Sister Space, black people in Britain, and they, are talking about resourcing this and different things for non-white people and how surprising all this was. I think it was the founder of Sister Space. She said, victim, that is it 1974 or 2024? I said, see, there you go. We do not understand It doesn't matter. They talk about your black leather jacket, classic, timeless. They say that your black dress, classic. White supremacy, racism, classic. It doesn't matter. 1974, 1874, 2024. Incidentally, that report about the spook who sat by the door, that was 1973, 74, when the movie and all that came out. Whew, that is right smack dab in the middle of the zebra murders. Can you imagine that movie playing in San Francisco? Oh my God. Like, woo, man, I'm even have to look like to see. So for real, is that movie playing in because they don't catch 1973? Wow. That the zebra murders is at the end of 1973, and so this is out on film. 1973. The book is out a little bit before that. Man, we read The Spook Who Sat by the Door in the Catherine Massey Book Club some years back. It's almost 10 years ago now, but we read the book, matched it up with the movie, and talked about some of the changes and the time period and all of that. That book is fiction. There's a lot of Negro name calling in that book and movie, which climaxes with a black person killing another black person. Isn't that Django too? I told ubiquitous, man. When we're supposed to be focused, who is the problem? Racist man? No. Sell out Uncle Tom Coons and nope. Is it 1974? Is it 2024? Is it 2000? Ubiquitous, man. Ubiquitous. Any hoodles, we will be back. Catch social media, all the rest, for updates and such. We'll be here middle of the week and all that jazz. We wrap up summer of 2012. Definitely take time for New Orleans. It is Kobe Bryant Day today. They're celebrating all weekend in Southern California, but we are encroaching on August 29. That is, that really August 28, 1955, Emmett Till castrated, assassinated Carolyn Bryant Dunham et al. August 29, I do connect those two events. August 29, that is when Katrina struck New Orleans specifically, and their Titan. Gary Rivlin, we also read in the Catherine Massey Book Club 2015, it was toxic flood waters. It wasn't just they had pristine water that snuck in to the Crescent City. Toxic. Talking about, my skin itch. My vision is blurred. Toxic flood waters that they had to wade through. The looters and black rapists. See, we went, what they call it, full circle. We started black rapists. Then we get to the end. Black rapists. We had Emmett Till in between, raping niggers. You never really get away from the raping nigger in the system of white supremacy racism. Anyway, we'll be back. Check middle of the week. We should be here. Feel free. Oh, I got to make sure I get it in. Replace white supremacy with love, because I had that in my notes. When we heard from Chantamiki Fortson, I hope I'm saying her name correctly. I'm a little ignorant, a little retarded, but I think it's Chantameki. That's it. Chantameki Fortson. Chantemekki. Chantameki Fortson. That is Roger Fortson's attempted black mother, privileged black male, 23 years old, who was shot and killed. He was in the armed services. When he opened the door, they said it was a so-called domestic dispute. He opened his residence, had a firearm in hand. One more time, enforcement officers, if they don't have a warrant, you didn't call them, you are not legally required to open the door. If they have a warrant, they'll make it known. You didn't call, Oh, well, you do not need to open the door. Even if it's law enforcement, you are not legally required to open the door. And that is another one I have invoked. Anyway, but his mother, she was talking about the officer who shot and killed, white officer who shot and killed Roger Fortson, that he's now been charged manslaughter, could face 30 years in prison if he's convicted. And she said she used to worry about her son, Roger Fortson, when he was overseas in service. She didn't worry about him when he was back home. No place is safe. Now you got two more recent examples, if you need it anymore. Sonia Massey, Roger Fortson, even in your residence, you are not safe in the system of white supremacy racism. She said, we didn't get this indictment through tearing up the city and beating people down and, all of that. We got it through love. Victims guaranteed qualified. She certainly said what she said. Thoughts and prayers to the whole Fortson family. Replace white supremacy with love. I said I should have been saying that just to make non-white people think and or remind us we do not have love. We would have to get busy replacing white supremacy to produce justice, which is love. We do not have love right now. Love didn't bring that indictment. I don't even really know what that means, to be truthful, but I know love did not bring an indictment of manslaughter for Roger Fortson. Not at all. And even with that now, particularly, I've seen enough of these cases. Don't think it's a guarantee that you're going to get a conviction. So then am I going to say that love got a not guilty verdict? No, man. Replace white supremacy with love, justice. We don't have love or justice. They are synonyms. We have neither. And even, I said, man, with all of the black people, mostly black males, that get shot and killed and choked and stabbed and nigger knocked by enforcement officers, the vast majority of time, black people do not go out and riot and burn and loot and get hashtags. And that does not happen the vast majority of the time. Like, you have got to be serious. All the different cases that we've talked about on a regular basis. Now, how many times are they actually going out and shooting and stabbing? And in fact, how many times does it end up being Sade Robinson? Who? What? What is his name? What? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Okay, I remember that one. Right. I forgot all. We moved on. We children got school and everything. I forgot all about that one. That's what I'm accustomed to. I am not accustomed to the police killed a black person and now we got to go burn down the whole city. No. There's Rodney King. Yep. You got some of those, but man, most of the time we just move on to the next, Anywho, that, not love, none of that. We don't have that. We got a real tacky, shabby, predictable system of white supremacy racism. Replace white supremacy with love. We do not have that. Condolences to Miss Fortson. We'll see what happens with the death of her child killed in his own residence with a gun. See, that's what I said. Taking shots at this was just a black male holding legally a firearm. And not supposed to be taking no shots at a white man, even thinking about taking shots at a white man. We shall return, white people permitting. Sobriety would be better. I'm going to start saying it for Sade Robinson. See, if I'm sober, I'm 19. I got to protect my brain computer, man. That's the way I tell my offspring. Hey, it's not that I'm being an ogre as a parent. Your brain isn't developed. Whatever you want to do, be in life, hopefully help us produce love, justice. But whatever you're going to do, don't you think you're going to need your brain? Yeah, okay. Well, drinking alcohol, oh my goodness, you're destroying your brain. You got to wait a little while for all that. Hey, I'm telling you, no tequila is worth your brain. Have you tasted anything so far in life that tastes so good you'd be willing to have your brain not work too well as long as you could have a sip of this every now and then? Have you tasted anything that good? And see if they say yes. Now, if they say yes, whoa, I have given them way too much high fructose corn syrup. Tahitian treat is not that good. But it should be no. That's what I would expect. A logical, correct thinking person, no, I have not sipped on anything. I don't know what Lil John got in his goblet, but I haven't sipped on anything that I would give up some of my thinking ability just if I could have a sip, a swig every now and then. If that's true, I'm telling you, nothing that they got at the liquor store is going to change your mind so that now it's up. Just let me get a fifth of that every month and I'll give up a little bit of my brain. No, man, no. For Sade Robinson, sobriety would be best. Now we cut down on some of those swangos and maybe even, hey, I'm just 19. You trying to mess up my brain computer, taking me to a bar. Matter of fact, I'm not even supposed to legally be here. What's up with you, man? There we go. You some type of Jeffrey Dahmer trying to get me? What's going on? Let me call my mom. There we go. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice, love immediately. No name calling other black people. No gossiping. No throwaway offspring. To the memory of Miss Vicky Van Valen, victim of white supremacy. Dearly missed. That also. Why? Let's get on our cosmic assignment. We are missing lots of years. People like Miss Van Valen leaving us way too early. System of white supremacy racism designed to rob non-white people of life and years of quality living. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.